What is happening out there, Roto Scouts football fans? Welcome to a Saturday afternoon show, gang. Here to talk about tomorrow's 13-game massive main slate for football on both sites. We're going to do a somewhat quick tour through the slate today for us. We'll still put in our time. We're going to go game through game, like usual. We'll talk about the top plays and everything. I'm going to try and keep the focus more leaning toward, DFS, go through some of the rankings and whatnot. A little bit lighter touch on this, on the player by player, every single stat that I usually go through. Cubs says 9 hours later. No, just thinking 3:15, 3:19 now on the clock. Still have a little bit of work to do to get the baseball projections done for the 7-something o'clock slate later on. I'd like to have us out of here 5:15, somewhere in that territory as a hard stop point. And I think we can handle that pretty easily. It gives us 2 hours to talk through this. And that'll give me a little bit of time to, 45 minutes will be more than enough to finish off the baseball projections. I got halfway through them before. And quite honestly, I was just sitting here slowly fading as I was putting those together. So I decided to go and take a quick little 20-minute power nap instead of knocking those out. Almost slept through the alarm and just completely missed this show. Was out cold about 6 minutes ago. But here we are. It was a long haul overnight last night getting the article up on the website. That is done. The screenshots of this information are not populated into the groups and optimizers and game notes article yet. Otherwise, that is done. Groups are there. I'll go through again and redo the groups as any news breaks around the ins and outs. The rankings for the stacks are there. Projections were updated this morning, as were the player-by-player individual positional rankings. Think we're pretty up to speed as far as any ins and outs go. Didn't see anything change throughout the afternoon today. But a lot to talk through. Anthony Taylor's here. Here's Cujo's here. Cubs is here. Cubs likes the above-below article. Yeah, me too. That's one of my favorite ones to write. I put that up on the site on Sunday morning. I knocked that out usually as the last piece after we've gone through everything, after the final projections update, before the final inactive list comes out. But I try and knock it out by 7, 8 o'clock Sunday morning as part of my process, just to get through those final, what are the pieces that are setting us a little bit different? Where might we be able to gain a little advantage? What might we want to give back to the field a little bit more? Should be a good one this week, too. We've got a couple key positions where we're a few points ahead of the field. A couple key positions where we're a few points behind the field. So that'll be a fun read this week, I have a feeling. One of the biggest positions of the week is going to be a popular one. It's this gentleman right here. You'll note QB1 by points. QB1 by value also on FanDuel. Nothing like making Caleb Williams in week 3 the top overall quarterback in your rankings. That'll make you feel comfortable as a content provider. No, couldn't go with somebody easy. Couldn't go with well, in a week that's starting 4 or 5 backup quarterbacks, maybe there is nobody easy, but I mean, couldn't do better than that. Doesn't make me comfortable, but trying to remind myself about the 4 times he threw for more than 300 yards, how much talent he's got, how much I like the skill players in that offense, and I'm kind of excited to get to that spot. That's going to be a ripe game in general, 50 points on the board between Dallas and Chicago. That is a big starting point overall. Yeah, I know the industry's all over Caleb this week. I know we're not out on a limb on that one, and he's going to be crazy popular. That only fuels the idea of having him as the very top-ranked quarterback overall. Kind of drives me nuts. But yeah, no, unfortunately, Greg, no, he's not going to be sneaky. Nope. He's carrying 5 dots over on RG. I know he's being talked up in 2 other sites at least. So, yeah, I know that he is definitely drawing the popularity, and well-deserved. I mean, that Dallas defense is god-awful this year. That should just be a good high-scoring source of fantasy scoring on both sides. I like the stack on the other side almost as much, if not more. Right? Dallas checks in with CD as the top-ranked receiver, top 10 value rating. Dak, third-ranked quarterback, top 5 value rating on both sides. Not far behind with Javonte, who's been outstanding to start the season. Jake Ferguson rating out pretty well. Dallas is actually stack 1 by fantasy points, 7-2 across the value ratings on both sides, where Chicago comes in with the strongly rated quarterback as stack 8 by points on DraftKings, stack 6 by points on FanDuel, but they pick up in value stack 2, stack 1, but you can see how crucially important that game's going to be. So cue the 14-13 snooze fest. Obviously, we know how those things go. Everyone talking him up nonstop. Yeah, I haven't observed anybody else's shows or anything like that. That's something it's not that I try and not do that. I'd be happy, honestly, to pick up some easy opinions out there in the world, to be quite honest. There's just no time in all of this for me to do that. But hey, it doesn't surprise me at all that he's getting talked up. Just the way that game came through projections. I didn't artificially put my thumb on anything to bring him down or push him up. He's just where he was. But you could easily have given him, a little bit more and factored in, bonus scoring for, hitting 300-yard marks and whatnot. So monster potential on this slate. Not surprising he's getting talked up. Let me dive into the Vegas board. It's always a good starting point. I forgot to move it over. There are several things that I probably have not prepared for this show, including the player-by-player game logs. Another reason we're not going to talk too much into too many statistics this week. Just don't have them. What we've got in the sheet here is what we're working with. I did figure out what that issue was. I mentioned it yesterday at the end of the baseball show. If you were here for the single game slate show the other day, this number was driving me nuts. The air yards share, because it just wasn't showing. I forget who it was, but it wasn't showing like correct math for the number of routes he had run on the average depth. And what I realized is the stupid board that I get them from, you have to manually change this to tell you, I want to see week one. I want to see weeks 1 and 2. I want to see weeks 1, 2, and 3. And I had forgotten that. So we were looking at only week 1 numbers in that initial one, which is why it disagreed with everything else I was seeing. That board is still a little bit funky, though. It disagreed with another statistical board I was looking at when I noticed that they had air yard share on there. I was just comparing back and forth. This one comes from FTN, right? Yeah. Which I think is a reasonably reputable source, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm literally only using it for the air yard share column here. So if we continue to find errors in that, I'll swap out to a better source for that. Everything else should be pretty rock solid. Along the way, we might notice a couple guys with juniors and whatnot in their name that I didn't correct in my long haul efforts last night. I think I caught most of them as I was doing the article and the statistics, but there might be a few along the way here. If you notice anybody, just shout it out. We'll take care of it. So Vegas-wise, these are going to be in a different order than anything you see on the board here, because I'm just going to read through the Pinnacle page. So the Raiders at the Commanders. 44-point game there. Commanders favored by 3. That's a spot where we've got a backup starting. Marcus Mariota making an appearance in for Jaden Daniels. This is backup quarterback week. It's going to be a weird one. Definitely interesting, though. Mariota's got the skill set to fill out that role in the Commanders' offense, and that is a high-level team. Not surprising that they're still favored there, but I think that brings that one a little bit closer in terms of the playability on both sides. Mediocre offense in play on the other side of that one, but a playable one with some high-end skill players, assuming everybody's there. 41.5-point game between Cincinnati and Minnesota. That's another spot. Obviously, the demise of Joe Burrow is a big story, and we have a backup going in Minnesota as well. Low-end overall game with a ton of very high-quality skill players. We've also got Jordan Mason taking over in the backfield from Minnesota. So just all kinds of all over the place in that Cincinnati-Minnesota game that is pretty close on the Vegas board. Just a 41.5-point total would have been, I feel, a lot bigger had we been healthy starting quarterbacks in on both sides. 22.25 points going toward Minnesota, 19.25. The other way around. 22.25 going toward Minnesota. Sorry, I'm looking at two different boards and I have them in different order with where the favorite and the underdog were. 22.25 going toward Minnesota. Cincinnati just drawing 19.25 in that one behind Browning. Browning was good in the jump in an emergency role last time out, and obviously major weapons at the skill positions. The Jets and the Bucks. The Jets are also fielding a backup quarterback. It's Tyrod Taylor coming back into our lives. Another spot where the skill set kind of aligns with what the Jets are looking for from that position anyway. Tyrod, last time we saw him in an extended role 2 years ago with the Giants, was actually really highly accurate through that stretch, measured out by a lot of advanced accuracy metrics pretty effectively. Ran for some scoring in that run, so it wouldn't shock me if he had a capable enough game, or at least give the Jets enough to hang with the Bucs for a little while. Bucs obviously a high priority offense on any given slate. That one's a 6.5 point spread in hometown Tampa Bay's favor. They're drawing a solid 25 point implied total out of that one. Green Bay at Cleveland. 41.5 points on the board there, 7.5 point favorites on the road for Green Bay. That is an ugly Cleveland squad. It is a talented Green Bay team with a deep receiving core. I'm interested to see them take the handcuffs off that that passing game a little bit. They've been a little bit low volume, a little bit light as far as what they've been attempting, but they've got all the weapons to work really aggressively down the field. So hopefully they do that a little bit more in this spot. Don't really like much coming out of the Cleveland side with a 17 point implied total on their end. Pittsburgh at New England. We had some success with Drake May last week, one of our top calls on the show and in articles. He was in that spot where Danny Dimes had succeeded in week 1. We like going back to the well for the skill set there. He ended up running in a touchdown, had a pretty effective day. Wasn't the top of the board, but was definitely a strong scorer, at least cashed your lineups for you. So that was a interesting spot. I think he's interesting on a relatively low-end team. I don't really like the running back timeshare there. Little bit of interest on the Pittsburgh side, primarily probably around Jalen Warren as a one-off. I don't really like Aaron Rodgers, but this New England team has given up 10 plus yards per pass attempt so far. So it could be a second successful Rodgers day, but he plummeted back to earth last time out. Indy against Tennessee, 43.5 points there. Indy favored by 4.5 on the road. I don't love the Daniel Jones spot, and I will continue not to. If I'm going to much there, it's mostly Jonathan Taylor and just getting overweight to the bell cow running back with a ton of volume. But Danny Dimes has been effective. He's the number 2 fantasy scorer at the quarterback spot over the first 2 games. I do think he can go there against the low-end Tennessee squad, and there are plenty of pass catchers in that offense. I like the deep threat in Alec Pierce, just to go with the nuke option alongside a Warren at the tight end, or Michael Pittman, or even if you're going in a Taylor into stacks, depending on what you're doing there. I really like that depth that Alec Pierce gives you on the quick strike, big play attacks. The Falcons at the Panthers. This is another monster spot in our projections. Both Michael Penix and Bijan Robinson are projecting out for huge games. Bijan is the top overall player on our slate, exceeding the quarterback projections in some other spots. Just a tremendous, tremendous spot for him individually against Carolina and for that team as a whole. They're favored by 5.5 on the road, 44-point game overall. I like them a little bit better than that, but 24.75 implied points for Atlanta coming into that one. Los Angeles at Philly. Philly's been a little bit low end as far as their offensive output. They've been running the ball pretty aggressively and scoring on the ground. Jalen Hurts yet to throw a touchdown pass over 2 games, but he scored a few touchdowns with his legs. Saquon a little bit limited for his efficiency, for his output, but seeing steady volume. I think everything's going to be perfectly fine in Philly, and the hope would be that this Los Angeles team would maybe carry them to need to score a little bit more. Los Angeles has a few weapons in the passing game. They have a high volume and demanding running back on the ground. It's a pretty solid matchup for DFS scoring. Philly favored by 3 at home, 44.5 point total. I like both sides in that one. Houston at Jacksonville. Jayville favored by a point at home, 44-point game there. A lot of 43.5, 44.5 point games, all falling right into that same mix, which is what makes that 50-point Dallas-Chicago game also stand out just a little bit more. But this one, Houston and Jacksonville, looks appealing on both sides. I prefer the Jacksonville side because I'm just riding on that Trevor Lawrence bandwagon this season after a messy year last year. Up and down performances in the first 2, but a lot of skill around him. Really needs to get the connection going with the top receiver, and then I think everything will be fine. But he's seen the emergence of Travis Etienne. There's been a little bit of quality there in Jacksonville and a lot of weapons to work with. On the Houston side, it really boils down to Nico Collins and all his quality. That's a dynamite bring back, if nothing else, in Jacksonville stacks. Denver at the Chargers, 45 and a half points in that one. Just a 3-point spread with Los Angeles favored. Obviously, premium defense coming in from Denver. Some quality skill players on both sides of that equation. The Chargers have been a high-volume passing attack early on. They've been outstanding with the return of Keenan Allen, with Justin Herbert finding success with all of those receivers. I like their upside in the passing game, but it is a tough Denver defense to succeed against in that regard. Not running away with shares on either side of that one, but wouldn't shock me if anything went off from that game. Those are capable teams on both sides. New Orleans and Seattle, a little lower end. Seattle favored by 7.5 in a home game, 41.5 points on the board. The talking point there is probably just Kenny Walker and Zach Charbonnet being out and Kenny Walker getting the lion's share of the opportunity there. He's been terrific to start the season. Should be a strong spot for him. I feel like he's going to get popular. Dallas and Chicago, as mentioned, top game on the board. Just a 1-point spread with Dallas favored by a point on the road. 50-point game. Monster totals, monster projections on both sides. 26-point implied for Dallas, 25 on the other side for Chicago. And then we hit Arizona and San Fran to end it. 2-point game there. 45.5 points on the board. Another close one. Kyler Murray's got some weapons in Arizona. Same thing, obviously, at the top for San Francisco. We're unlikely to get Brock Purdy again. But Mac Jones was successful last time out after we talked about him and didn't have him too highly rated. He checks into this slate with a little bit better of a number. He did go up a little bit before Sunday started last week, but wasn't highly held in my esteem. Went out through 3 touchdowns, I want to say, in last week's game. Was pretty outstanding. I'd like to see him do it again before we get any real faith, but we definitely know he's got some workable options there in the passing game with Ricky Pearsall, with Juwan Jennings, obviously with McCaffrey's upside there. And again, a lot to work with on the Arizona side, including the top tight end of the week. It's a big, deep 13 gamer. A lot to work with on this one. Greg, no issue if you want to switch to the other side of that game and ride with Dak. I like that side just as much, and we'll have a fair amount of both. But yeah, no issues at all going to the Dak side, and especially if he's coming up lighter owned. Pair him with CD, grab somebody like Rome on the bring back instead, and rock and roll. I assume it's more expensive going that route, but it's probably not a gigantic difference, and you pick up plenty of point scoring opportunity, and you can still build essentially the same lineup, just in a slightly different configuration with the other quarterback. And Dak is the higher volume quarterback. He's the guy who has certainly found more success throughout his career, a longer career. Up and down performances so far this year, but rock solid as far as an option in that game. So how do we want to do this? Let's take a look real quick. We'll go, we'll sort the stack rankings again. So again, Dallas, top spot on the board. Couple of premium skill position players. You want to go game by game, or should we just kind of talk it through like this and just kind of go down? I'll reverse it, and we'll go from worst to best. And spoiler, these are the top 2 teams. Yeah, we'll go back. We'll do game by game as usual. But yeah, top option on the board showing a lot of value as well with Dallas. They're fairly priced across both sides, being the top rated team while landing 7th and 2nd across sites. Not too bad. On the Philly side, it's just the limitations in their game script so far and what they've been rolling out there. They haven't needed to do much to win football games early. Hurts has only thrown the ball 22.5 times a game, 126.5 yards. Uncharacteristically low production from a fantastic football player. Same deal with Barkley. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith have been impacted by the lighter volume in the passing game. Goddard missed a game. John Dotson's kind of interesting. That's an effective second-ranked team. They slip a little bit by value. 3-4 for Atlanta. As mentioned, they look pretty tremendous, especially right here. You'll note the monster projections on Bijan. RB1 on both sides, 2nd and 5th by value, even at fairly high prices, $9,500 on the FanDuel slate. Just tells you everything you need to know about that matchup against the Carolina team that thus far this season, allowing 5.2 yards per rush attempt, 26th ranked in football. They're also giving up 7.1 yards per pass attempt. That's 21st ranked overall while drawing just an 8.1% pressure rate, which is nothing. So potential big day for Michael Penix. Almost certainly a big day opportunity for Bijan. And I like some of the skill players that go with this equation. I think Tyler Allgeier's in the mix a little bit to poach a touchdown, which could screw up the Bijan performance. A lot going on with the Atlanta spot. Tampa's just Tampa. Going up against the Jets, who got crushed by Pittsburgh for passing yards and 4 passing touchdowns in week 1. Mike Evans has been really, really good in some of the advanced metrics, but has just been hit by tough coverage in the first 2 and kept to limited output. And that could be the same thing that happens to him here in game 3. But eventually we're going to see Evans really hit his stride for the season. Everybody's going to say, oh, well, Mike Evans back on form, when really he's been winning routes. He's been dominating out there, just getting cut down a little bit by coverage. But an excellent option. Ibuka's questionable to play, but seems like he's going to be out there. He's been outstanding in the first couple games as well. Price has gone up a lot. He's 50th ranked, though, while being 24th ranked by points on DraftKings, 50th ranked by price. Rams 5th, but very expensive. Dipped significantly with the way that cost piles up around Puka, Stafford, Devontae, a little bit of Kyren Williams. But Kyron's less important to the stack, in my opinion. More a volume-based guy that you can just play outside of stacks. Doesn't get a ton of involvement in the passing game. Jake Browning going to be the deciding factor for the quality of the Bengals for sure, especially around T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Chase Brown in the mix as well for a little bit of action from the running game. Maybe picks up a little bit of value against the team giving up 5.2 yards per rush attempt and with the backup in there. San Fran just looking solid, right about where they typically would be. Again, good skill players there that we'll get into. Chicago does go down there 8th and 6th ranked by points, but 2nd and ranked and 1st ranked by value. And I love the upside there, as we've talked about a couple times already. Seattle, just kind of a mixer. 9th ranked, but solid for value, especially on DK, where everybody's a little bit cheap. JSN 65 and Sammy Darnold just 51, most notably over there. Those are affordable prices for that combo. Just as a 2-man, that really works well. You obviously have Kenny Walker that you want to get to, and you've got a still capable Cooper Kupp there as well. So it is a solid group of players. A couple of dart throws down the board. 10-1 for the Minnesota Vikings. They're coming in with Carson Wentz at the helm. Should be an interesting one. We did just see this team revitalize Sam Darnold in basically the exact same kind of a role last year. Wouldn't stun me if Wentz came in, found an immediate connection with Justin Jefferson, maybe a little bit even goes toward Jalen Naylor, and we get things going there. TJ Hawkinson. A lot of weapons in this offense. Jordan Mason's an outstanding explosive back. So that's an interesting spot. And I love that they're showing that first-rank value. Wentz comes in at just 4,000 on that DraftKings slate. He ranks number 2 because we have by value because we have 2 $4,000 quarterbacks to work with on DraftKings. Jordan Mason, top-ranked value running back on both sites, looks tremendous at 54, 58. And then we just start hitting the mid-type teams. Arizona, they're fine but not special, and they're a little bit pricey. You do get a little bit of value out of the Chargers. And again, there's a lot going on with that passing attack that we can like with the 3-headed monster, McConkey, Keenan Allen, and Quentin Johnston, and the way that Justin Herbert's been firing the ball off to them. So like a little bit of the Chargers up at the top. Pull a little value out of Indy. Again, I don't love the Danny Dimes of the equation, but absolutely rock solid option in Jonathan Taylor at the running back spot. And you have a competent receiver, a good rookie tight end, another competent underneath type receiver, and then an absolute nuclear bomb of a deep option here. Pierce is crazy unpredictable, especially with Danny Dimes throwing him the ball. But that average depth of target is outstanding. And when he goes off, he can really go off. Gino at the wheel for Vegas, just a mix and match quality team overall. Probably a little more interested in like standalone Brock Bowers, maybe some standalone Jacoby Myers shares. Those are the 2 top priority receivers if you're getting into anything with Gino, though. Little bit of interest maybe in Ashton Jeanty, who was a little better in the second game, but not overly productive overall. Definitely not paying off that draft pedigree so far. I think he will, but it's been ugly so far. Jacksonville's interesting, but ranked just 15, 16 and not really showing any kind of value, just more a faith play there. And then we start trending down somewhat. We do have an appealing Green Bay team here. Jacobs isn't any given slate running back who's always going to grade out well, especially with his ridiculous touchdown scoring potential. But the connection between Jordan Love and Romeo Doubs is growing. Dobbs coming in as the lead receiver at 4,800, 5,900. He's gained fantastic separation and route win numbers on the season. Hasn't been tremendous as far as what the actual output on the field has turned into so far, but the opportunity to do that and the nominal number one, at least right now, with Jaden Reed out. Matthew Golden in the second spot, but more expensive on DraftKings, slightly less expensive on FanDuel. I see it that way, that Romeo is the top option there, Golden number 2. You've also got a premium option in Tucker Kraft and another deep threat in Dontavian Wicks to get down the field. So lots of work with still in Green Bay, and then some wild card options down the board like Savion Williams and Luke Musgrave, who is likely to fill in for Tucker Kraft, who I'm just now remembering is still questionable and potentially not playing after hurting his knee, I want to say, on Thursday. Washington with Mariota. Somebody in the chat liked Mariota. Who said that? Good to see you too, Beyond the Rabbit Hole. Power's all in on Mariota. I am not. Not the biggest Marcus Mariota booster here. He had like I said in the run up, he does have the skills to be, the dead homeless man's Jaden Daniels. There's not a lot of there. Last relevant 3 years ago, in 2022, over 13 games for Atlanta. Threw for 2,200 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and gained 438 yards on the ground over 85 carries, scored 4 times on the ground. That's really what I'm most interested in here. Just that ability to make things happen. If he can still do it, then maybe we get a little something. That is your other $4,000 quarterback, top rated for value on DraftKings as the number 1, but 19th by fantasy points, 18-3 on the FanDuel slate. It's got a lot to work with, though, with Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel there. We're going to see Bill take over at the running back position after the devastating injury at the end of week 2 for Austin Eckler. So Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has basically a clear path towards dominating the carries here. It's just Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez to push him, so not a lot there. Zach Ertz, premium tight end option still with scoring potential down the board. Not a terrible Washington team, and definitely wouldn't rule them out just because of Mariota, but probably more interested in just poaching some of the skill players out of there and not necessarily investing in the success of the quarterback. Spencer Rattler was adequate in week 2. Still not an appealing quarterback. Still kind of an anchor on the upside of his skill players. But Chris Olave can find success if Rattler has another good day. Same deal with Rashid Shaheed. Juwan Johnson's been a top-end tight end so far. Ranks in 7th and 6th on DraftKings, 5.7 on FanDuel. Very cheap at 3,900 on DK for the production he's had so far this season. That's an interesting guy. And then Alvin Kamara is always interesting because he just carries the ball constantly. 20-plus touches basically always in the cards for Kamara, and had that in the most recent game. Getting into the real dregs, outside of Nico Collins, there's really not a lot to like, in my opinion, about this Houston offense. CJ just continues to disappoint and underwhelm. He is the 8th ranked option at quarterback on the FanDuel slate, just middle of the board as far as the fantasy production. Nick Chubb doesn't look great. I know he scored last week, but it was just kind of a ugly TD, 3.8 yards per rush attempt so far this season. I'm not sold, but he is going to have the lead role. Christian Kirk, mix and match quality receiver. Dalton Schultz hasn't done much for us at the tight end spot. Houston defense looking like the top option in that game going up against Jacksonville. But I do like the Jags on the other side there. Tennessee is another weird one. Tony Pollard's been seeing volume and is a productive running back who's very interesting as RB 11.6 on DraftKings and 11.3 on the FanDuel slate. A lot of value in Tony Pollard. As a standalone play, I think he looks pretty terrific. But we see Tennessee coming in with a good value score as a stack on both sides, despite pretty mediocre rankings, 20th and 18th. Part of that is driven by the just potential productiveness of both Calvin Ridley and Alec Ayomanor, who's really developed a connection with Cam Ward early in the season. Ward himself been really bad and probably the weakest link in this entire chain. But these two receivers are interesting. These two receivers are interesting. That running back is interesting. The tight end is a little bit of quality there. I don't think we're going aggressively to Tennessee, but maybe it's one that you remember for having a few cheap skill options. You can see some value popping on these receivers here. Calvin Ridley, your top value receiver on the FanDuel slate, is WR1 in that category, 18th by fantasy points, 21-6 on DraftKings. No slouch over there either. Yeah, Denver just rolling into Chargers defense that has been pretty effective at holding down the pass. 5.3 yards allowed per pass attempt, ranked second overall so far this season. They've also come away with 3 interceptions in just 2 games, 5 sacks on the board. So it might be a rough day for Bo Nix, who's only kind of a middle-of-the-board quarterback anyway. Might be a rough day for Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin, middle-of-the-board type talents at the wide receiver spot. Maybe it plays up a little bit for J.K. Dobbins. So far, 4.6 yards allowed per rush attempt by the Chargers. Maybe feeds his quality a little bit. Not the most efficient back in the league. He's also got RJ Harvey pushing him for carries. A little back and forth there, but we still lean toward Dobbins. But overall, not an overly appealing game. Pittsburgh at New England, kind of the same thing, 22-11. They do pick up some value on the DraftKings slate. Jalen Warren's pretty cheap at 55. He ranks 7th overall by DraftKings value among running backs. That's really where most of it comes from. Yeah, not really anybody else as far as the value. Aaron Rodgers a little bit, dropping from 17 by points to 13 by value. But most of that is created by Jalen Warren. I am interested in the Warren play. Picked up the lead role and kind of ran with it, no pun intended. Kenny Gainwell fading a little bit as the backup, and then Caleb Johnson just has not been involved at all in his first 2 NFL games. Don't like Carolina at all on this side. Totally relying on Bryce Young to do anything. I do like Ted McMillan as a standalone guy. Chuba Hubbard's always playable from the mid-range at running back, but nothing special right now. Again, Drake May showed a lot of competence. He rates out differently than his receiver core. His numbers on his own, pretty good. The receiver's kind of a mixed bag. Stephon Diggs, Keishon Boutte, Demora Douglas, not special. Both of these guys have been okay. Boutte really disappointed after being the hot waiver wire commodity going into last week. It's got that running back split between Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson, who both look pretty mediocre here. I just don't love the upside outside of Drake May on his own, but I don't really want to play the quarterback just by himself with no correlated scoring. Not that quarterback anyway. He does have a little bit of value with his running, but not that guy. Then we dip down toward the 25th ranked Jets. They pick up a little bit of value. Both Tyrod Taylor at the quarterback spot. It's kind of anybody's game, and they just don't have a lot of depth on this team. You can see pretty limited as far as where the scoring is coming from. It's the 3 obvious guys. It's the quarterback, Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson. Everybody else on this team kind of sucks. And speaking of sucks, Cleveland. 3-headed running back option. Joe Flacco at quarterback. 2-headed tight end. Jerry Jeudy. What's not to like for fantasy? Cedric Tillman. That is an ugly team to round things out. Michael Knack just stashed likely. Mark Andrews is completely dust. Michael saying Kraft not playing. Yeah, that sounded like the case. Still got him in because he was questionable as of this morning when I looked at it at, I don't know, like 6 a.m. Hopefully he didn't just see me dribble down my face. Is that a product of being tired, or do I just not know how to drink coffee? I think we know I know how to drink coffee. Let's get these guys sorted. So, yeah, this just gets into sorting the game by game alphabetically, just for lack of a better way to do it. So getting to our first one with Arizona and San Fran. Some quality options again on both sides. You've got the premium tight end of the day, Trey McBride, ranking 1st on both sides by points, 2nd by value on both. But he's part of a mediocre stack. Arizona, not exactly special. They're going up against the San Francisco defense that's been pretty decent in the first 2 games. They're allowing just 3.7 yards per rush, 6.3 yards per pass attempt. Kyler, for his part, he's thrown the ball 27 times fairly accurately. 7.1 yards per pass attempt, but it only on a 5.9 intended air yards per attempt. More of a dink and dunk kind of an offense than anything else. Limited numbers as far as the average depth of target goes, outside of Michael Wilson with his monster 17.5 that creates a 32% allegedly per those numbers air yard share over 3 targets a game. Over 3 targets a game. Everybody else operating on significantly shorter yardage, including Marvin Harrison Jr. 9.4 is not nothing as far as the depth of target. He's got 31% or so of the air yards. He scored a touchdown, but just 5.5 targets a game and sub 10 as far as the depth. Nobody really bombing down the field in this offense. Kyler can get it done a little bit with his legs. He's gained 5 yards per rush attempt, over 7 carries a game. Hasn't scored on the ground yet. 3 touchdown passes, 1 interception. McBride hasn't gotten in the end zone yet. That was a problem for him throughout last season, but he's significantly targeted. 8 targets on average, coming in with 8.7 yards per target, 6 catches a game so far. It's been pretty tremendous, and he gets out and gets it a little bit for a tight end, 6+ yards A-dot. James Conner's a really productive running back. That's a playable spot. This year so far, though, the efficiency's dipped a little bit, just 3.2 yards per rush attempt, just 11.5 attempts per game, but some involvement in the passing attack. He's got a touchdown in the passing game. He's got 1 in the rushing game. See some opportunities for scoring potential when they get in close in the red zone. Trey Benson pushing him a little bit, but doesn't rate out nearly as high. Benson on the season, couple significant gains, just 5.5 carries a game, so those numbers are skewed by a small sample. Does have involvement in the passing game, though. Drawn 3.5 targets a game, picked up 6 targets in the last contest. So a little bit of mix and match quality there. He's not going to rank out well, but if he breaks a big play, or if he just happens to be on the field and get his number called in the right timing as far as when they're down close, could easily find the end zone. One of the more likely scorers among the second string running backs. Wilson does have that good depth of target. It's kind of a wild card for that. Just, throw that dart and hope for the best with it. But more like a guy who jumps into to some +2s in stacks. Zay Jones, Greg Dortch pretty much dead on a rival down lineup. It's mostly about Kyler plus McBride plus Harrison and then James Conner shares. He can work into those stacks, but he also plays up well on his own. On the other side, McCaffrey, just on his own, is perfectly fine. If you just want to dip into San Francisco just to grab Christian McCaffrey shares when you can afford them, there's nothing wrong with that. Mac Jones, again, was effective in his performance last week. Come on. And if you want the detailed game by game, spot by spot, stat by stat breakdown, check out the article up on the website. But in week 2, Mac came in with a little bit of skepticism here. Threw for 279 yards on 39 pass attempts, threw 3 touchdown passes, 7.2 yards per pass attempt. Had a 40+ yard play, 2 20-yard plays. Threw 5 balls in the red zone, came away with 3 touchdowns. Not a bad day at the office for Mr. Mac Jones. He's got premium receivers to work with, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings. Right now, I have Pearsall slightly outpacing Jennings because Jennings is dealing with a little bit of an injury. If everything's equal, I slightly prefer Jennings between the two as a talent, but I think they land pretty evenly on any given slate. Jennings picking up wide receiver 17 by value on DraftKings. Pearsall at just 56, picking up wide receiver 9 by value on FanDuel. Maybe the most interesting spot between those four spots for the 2 receivers. So far this season, Pearsall, an 18.1 yard average depth of target is pretty tremendous. Jennings has a touchdown on the board. Pearsall went for 108 in week 1, caught 4 of 7 targets, 15.4 yards per target, ran 33 routes and picked up a 21.2% target share, 3.27 yards per route run in that game. So strong performance there while catching only 4 passes. Didn't get in the end zone and then caught 4 for just 56 yards, despite routes going up slightly. Drew 6 targets, put up 1.51 yards per route run in week 2. Jennings is dealing with an ankle and a shoulder injury. Didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. We'll see what it looks like. This is a late game, so we'll hopefully have news by the early lock. But if not, we want to lean away a little bit, which is unfortunate because dynamic premium player. 5 catches for 89 yards and a touchdown in week 2. That was on 10 targets, 2.34 yards per route run over 38 routes. Solid option. Jake Tongas, just a mix and match quality backup tight end filling in. Good boy. Go ahead. I'm all over the place. Filling in for Kittle, who's on IR. It's not a premium spot, but that's a cheap tight end. If you're just going to this team and building out a stack, 2,900 is dirt cheap. So you do get a little playability around that. He picked up 5 targets in the most recent game. Has a touchdown on the board as a just random guy touchdown. Ranks as just tight end 24, 21, and 17, 16 across sites. That shows you the true value. But he's playable. This is a highly ranked stack. Downboard, not a lot of options. Kendrick Bourne, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, nothing really to see there. Atlanta, Carolina. Again, monster option for Atlanta here. Bijan should have a day against this defense. They've been targetable with running backs for the better part of the last couple seasons. 5.2 yards per rush attempt so far this year, ranks 26. Doesn't look like anything's changed. Bijan, for his part of that equation, only coming away with 4.9 yards per rush attempt on 17 carries so far, 2.4 yards after contact per attempt. He's caught, he had 6 targets on average, so he's heavily involved in the passing attack. 23 potential attempts per potential touches per week is dynamite for volume, and he's going up against one of the teams that is just incapable of stopping the running back. He's got a touchdown on the board in the passing game. Has not scored in the rushing game yet this season, but that is likely to change this week. Fire away with Bijan Robinson shares. Looks elite on both sides. Top-ranked option by scoring. 2nd and 5th by value. Michael Penix checks in with just 1 passing touchdown on the season. He ran 1 in as well. He's gained just 2.9 yards per rush attempt on 3.5 carries a game. It's been an insignificant part of the action early on, but it is a part of his skill set. It is a part of the game, so you would expect that to expand. So far, 6.9 yards per pass attempt on 6.7 intended air yards, right around where he's expected to be. Mediocre as far as the total yardage, but it's a growing quarterback with some capable receivers. Drake London is a top-end option. He's pulled down 9.5 targets a game on a 6.9 yard ADOT, working up to 31.4 yards, 31.43% share of the air yards. Darnell Mooney missed the first game, came out 4 targets last week on a 10-yard average depth. That's a solid second wide receiver to work with. Mooney. Come on. This is why I like having this stuff loaded up as screenshots beforehand so I don't have to wait for these pages to load. Mooney caught 64 passes on 106 targets in this offense just last year. Scored 5 touchdowns, gained 992 yards, 9.4 yards per target. I'm trying to plug the mouse back in while talking. In that first game, he ran 25 routes, just 0.8 yards per route run, 2 catches for 20 yards. Needs to work back into form, but could start right away here against Carolina. Kyle Pitts, first guy on the board here that we haven't changed out some of the stats there. Let me grab that real quick. Pitts never really seems to deliver on what the expectations for his talent are. So far this season, 6.5 targets a game. He has put up 7.4 yards per target on the season, just a 5.1 yard average depth of target, not exactly getting out and getting down the field, But among tight ends, that's a middle of the board type number. Beyond the Rabbit Hole saying Bijan over C-Mac. Jake Swales is saying Bijan and CMC. I like that. If you can get to that, that is a dynamite combo up top. Pitts in week 2 just ran 24 routes on 50 snaps with the offense. Was more involved the week before. Ran 38 routes, was targeted 8 times, caught 7 of those for 59 yards. Hasn't been in the end zone yet, but a solid overall 1.55 yards per route run. Not bad. Came away with 602 yards and 4 touchdowns last season. But again, never really delivered on that first year. 2021, as a rookie, a 20-year-old rookie, 17 games, 1,026 yards. Only scored the 1 touchdown, but caught 68 of 110 targets. He's never gone near that number of yards again. He's never gone near that number of targets again. At best, he's been 15 catches short of that mark. The touchdowns have gone 1 in the first year, 2 in the second year, 3 in the third year, 4 in the fourth year. So we are due for 5 touchdowns this year. That's the promise he's made to us. We might start getting him in this game. He's a playable tight end option. 3,900 is pretty aggressively cheap for a guy with his just raw skill set. Ranks out as tight end 9-9 on DraftKings, tight end 9-8 on the FanDuel slate. Wouldn't sleep on him. And then Tyler Algier. A potential problem at the running back spot if we get aggressive about Bijan, because he does poach touchdowns. He does get involved. He's carried the ball 13 times a game over the first 2 contests this season. That is an involved running back. He's got the ability to punch the ball into the end zone. He's got the ability to move the ball down the field. He's got the ability to take over an entire series for this team. In week 2, he played 20 snaps with the offense, carried the ball 16 times, ran 2 routes, drew a target. So out of the 20 snaps, he was running a play on 18 of them, and he touched the ball on 17 of them. That is aggressive involvement when he's on the field. That led to 76 yards on the ground and a touchdown. In week 1, he carried the ball 10 times, just gained 24 yards, was not at all relevant, ran 6 routes, went untargeted. That's your average Tyler Algier day, but he can have that week 2 game from time to time and really, really bend your Bijan play at a high price. So he's more of a threat to Bijan than anything else, but he is another guy that checks in as a somewhat loosely playable downboard running back, just as a dart throw at that cheap touchdown again. RB 28, 27, 27, 26. Falcons defense is in play against the low-end Carolina squad on the other side. For their part, Carolina rates out poorly. Bryce Young, quarterback, 18-19 across sites by points. Does a little bit better than that by value on FanDuel as the 11th ranked quarterback. So far, completing fewer than 60% of his pass attempts, 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, a terrible 5.4 yards per pass attempt, 7.2 intended air yards per attempt. He's trying to get the ball downfield. He's just not all that successful at it. He does have an interesting receiver in Tet McMillan to work with. Xavier Legette is banged up and questionable to play, but McMillan is the interesting guy. He's pulling 9.5 targets a game, 10 in the most recent performance. Comes on a 9.8 yard average depth of target, 30 and change percent of the air yards, gaining 8.8 yards per target on the season so far. Oh, come on. So like I said before, it's really between Tet and maybe some Chuba Hubbard shares here, and then probably thank Carolina for their time. But Tet comes in drafted 8th overall, 6'5", 212, just a physical specimen of a receiver, if nothing else, out of Arizona. 6 catches for 100 yards on his 10 targets in the week 2 game. Played 66 snaps with the offense, ran 53 routes and 18.9% target share on those routes. 1.89 yards per route run in that game, 2.06 in the debut performance. Caught 5 balls for 68 yards in that one. So a capable young kid developing a little bit of a connection with Bryce Young, which Bryce desperately needs out there. McMillan rides a little bit on the young train as far as needing to find quality at the quarterback spot to really pay off his value. But I think I prefer just taking shares of him as an individual in other lineups, and definitely probably well said. Definitely an interesting bring back option in my stacks of Atlanta, which is probably where I get to this game the most. Hubbard gaining just 3.7 yards per rush attempt, kind of uninspiring as usual, but 2.3 yards after contact per attempt is not nothing. 13 carries a game with some involvement in the passing game puts him in the 18 to 20 potential touches range. If we're getting more than 20, that's gold. If we're getting 18 to 20, that's pretty damn good. So any given slate, we can absolutely see Chuba Hubbard go off. He hasn't gotten in the end zone on the ground yet, but he scored twice in the passing game. Comes on a 0.2-yard average depth of target because everything's coming out of the backfield, but he's gained 6.5 yards per target, picking up a handful of opportunities each game. So that is an involved running back, both in terms of picking up handoffs and with his involvement in the passing game. There's not much else to like in this offense. They did involve Rico Dowdle a little bit more last week, but it's been kind of disappointing for Rico so far, even when they did give him a little bit of an opportunity. 2.3 yards per rush attempt is not exactly getting it done. It's been targeted loosely in the passing game. In between, Xavier Legette, again, banged up, 6.3 yards per pass attempt, 15% of the air yards, pretty limited option at receiver even when healthy. Hunter Renfrow has been involved. He's gotten 2 touchdowns on the board early, picking up an 8.7-yard average depth of target, and he's been targeted 7.5 times a game early on. But it's Hunter Renfrow. We know for sure who Hunter Renfrow is. It's just an average receiver who's going to come and go with performances like that here and there and finish the season with 4 or 5 touchdowns, maybe. Not a go-to option by any means. He's cheap. He's got that going for him, but cheap in a bad offense doesn't get you much. Jatavian Sanders knows about that. He has seen regular targeting. 8.1-yard average depth is pretty decent for a tight end. Amounts to 16% of the air yards he's failed to get in the end zone yet this season, but probably their second most interesting receiver in this game, or second most interesting pass catcher in this game. And involved target as far as PPR scoring goes. 39 routes run in week 2, was targeted 9 times, caught 7 passes, only gained 54 yards, but in PPR scoring, that makes a difference. Limited options on the Carolina side, though. They rate out as stack 23-21 and 23-22 across sites. A lot more quality going in Atlanta's direction. Stack 3-3 on DraftKings, 4-6 on FanDuel. The Sin Min game, not nearly as interesting as it might have been. Carson Wentz in for Minnesota. Jake Browning in for Cincy. Browning checks in as just the 20th ranked quarterback. Wentz the 22nd ranked quarterback, but Wentz carries a 2nd and 5th ranked value score because he costs 4,000 on DraftKings and 6,000 on FanDuel, and has a little bit of quality and could just be floated by the efforts of Justin Jefferson out there, TJ Hawkinson, Adam Thielen, Jalen Naylor, some quality skill players. That value pushes the Vikings up the board to stack 1 by points or by value on DraftKings, stack 7 by value on FanDuel. Cincinnati, on the other side, they're stacked 6 and stacked 8 by points, but the reverse is true with them, where they've got some high prices pushing them down the value board. They're 25th and 26th by points per dollar value. That's a little bit nuts. Jamar Chase is knocked down slightly from his typical high scoring points projection, but not by much. Just very high priced. Chase Brown, fairly high price for his production so far and for expectations in this contest with the backup quarterback in there. T is not cheap, and Browning slides in at 55.68 off a productive emergency performance last week. Don't really love the Cincinnati option outside of just taking some shares of the one-offs. In that emergency action after Burrow was hurt last week, we got 21 of 32 passing, 2 touchdowns out of Browning, but also 3 interceptions. Some downside there. We also got a lot of rumors about what this team was going to do at the quarterback position, including trading for Jameis Winston and Kirk Cousins and so on and so forth. We'll see what it looks like. Browning's got the opportunity to at least win a little bit of time with a good game here. But he's going up against a tough defense as well. Minnesota's allowed 6.2 yards per pass attempt on the season. They've gained a 32.8% pressure rate, come away with 5 sacks in 2 games. pretty stout against the pass. Against the rush, they've allowed a little bit. 5.2 yards per rush attempt, ranks 26th. So maybe that does feed the day for Chase Brown to slide in between some of the premium receivers and have a little bit of a day for himself. Brown has not been all that productive. He's got a touchdown on the board over 2 games. He's seen a fair amount of volume. Carried the ball 21 times, but gained just 43 yards in week 1. 16 carries for 47 in week 2. So overall, that's amounting to just 2.4 yards per rush attempt, but it comes on 18.5 carries a game, 3 targets a game. So we're over our 20 threshold as far as potential touches. Just 1.4 yards after contact per attempt, pretty mediocre. Limited production as far as what he does with those targets, but an involved player is always important. He ranks 8th by points, 9th by points on FanDuel, mid-teens by value on both sides. Jamar Chase is Jamar Chase. He's ranking 3rd by points, but slips to 30th and 36th by value at those aggressively high prices. Any fraction of a point you take away knocks him further and further down the value board, just given the ridiculously high price. But he's still one of the top receivers in football, and he can make somebody like Jake Browning look pretty good. Chase went out last week, caught 14 passes on 16 targets. That's what I mean by making somebody like Jake Browning look pretty good. 165 yards and a touchdown. Put up a ridiculous 3.3 yards per route run. Week before that, 42 snaps with the offense, received just 5 targets on 31 routes, caught just 2 of them for 26 yards. Bad week 1, but that was the case for everybody wearing Cincinnati uniforms in week 1. T. Higgins, a premium 1A type option at the receiver position. Solid running mate for Jamar Chase. T saw a lot of success the last time Browning was in as a regular starter a couple years ago when Burrow was hurt. Something to remember. They developed a little bit of a connection. So far this season, he scored a touchdown as well last week. Ran 45 routes, picked up 8 targets, caught 3 of them for 56 yards. I think we see performances like that up and down from T, where we're maybe under 100 yards, but solid volume, gets into the end zone from time to time. Probably still best played as individual options, though, rather than stacking it up where you have to ride on Browning, who is not exactly cheap. Not too much to like around Mike Gesicki, Noah Fant, just mix and match tight end options. We're kind of splitting that role. Andre Yoshivas is an interesting depth option at receiver, typically getting down the field a little bit for deep opportunities. 12.4 yard average depth of target on the season so far. He's only seen 2.5 looks per game. A lot of volume needs to go through Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. But Yoshivas is the nominal number 3 here. He will see some opportunities through the season. And just that big playability keeps him on the board for consideration. He caught just 1 of his 5 targets last week, ran 37 routes, but was targeted 5 times. That amounts to 0.32 yards per route run, which is better than week 1 when he had 0 yards per route run on 20 routes. Played 33 snaps with the offense, went untargeted. On this side, Justin Jefferson and the other receivers' quality is going to live and die with whatever Carson Wentz looks like. We just kind of have some faith, and he's pulling a 2nd and 5th ranked value spot at those ridiculously cheap prices, but that's more a factor of the price than the projection. That is a mid-board, low-end kind of a backup quarterback projection. Ranks 22nd by potential fantasy scoring. So do with that what you will. The Vikings are very, very affordable. Stack 1 by value, stack 7 by value across sites. Justin Jefferson just out there playing all the snaps, essentially. Premium option at the position. He's got a touchdown on the board. He's dominating air yards again this season. 13.2 yard average depth of target, 6.5 targets a game. He's carried the ball a couple times, but obviously we're just looking at him for his ridiculous abilities in the passing game, and he's a monster performer in that department. Greg says, Wentz lineup I am messing around with. I can fit in C-Mac with Chase Jefferson and Jackson Smith and Jigba, punting defense and tight end. Love that. Sounds pretty damn good to me, man. Anytime you can get all those players in your lineup, yeah, it seems worth doing. It's going to be a approach that I'm sure others will take. But if you can just differentiate on those cheap value pivots that you make, problem solved. Jefferson in week 2, 3 catches for 81 yards, had a touchdown on 4 catches in the first week, 7 targets, 6 targets. Reasonable numbers, 1.83 yards per route run, 2.79 yards per route run is outstanding in the second game. So productivity's there. The options are there as far as the target potential, and could soar into the double digits for targeting this week with Wentz at the helm. Aaron Jones out as well for this team, so we get the explosive Jordan Mason in this role. He's gained 4.1 yards per rush attempt early in the season on 12 carries a game. He's been fairly productive, involved at a limited level, 2 targets a game, saw 3 last week, but hasn't really done anything with them in the passing game. I think we just look for him on the ground here. Should pick up an additional couple of opportunities and has major scoring potential. 5,400, 5,800 premium value, the top rated value running back on both sites. RB1 for value, RB7 on DraftKings for points, RB5 on FanDuel for points. Even if he was more expensive, we would be interested in Jordan Mason here. Handcuffs should be off as the full go lead running back. Hawkinson rates out as tight end 3 as a cheap option. He's only 3,800 on DraftKings. That is notably cheap for a player like Hawkinson. He's played 77% of the snaps last week, or 77 on average, 72% last week, drawing 3.5 targets a game so far. He caught 1 ball for 12 yards last week, 3 balls for 15 yards the week before, under a yard per route run so far on the season. Last year, didn't get in the end zone over 10 games, but had 5 touchdowns on 95 catches over 127 targets the year before that in this offense. Has been a productive scorer in terms of touchdowns in his time with Detroit and then his first few years here in Minnesota. So, yeah, 10 uglier games last year, 41 catches for 455 yards and no scoring. No touchdowns and pretty limited output over the first 2 games while playing a little banged up to start this year. Not great. Obviously, we want to see some scoring, but the potential remains. And if they're looking in his direction when we get down toward the end zone, which they are yet to do, but should, one would expect the scoring to arrive for a player of that caliber, and he's very cheap. So there's some appeal on TJ Hawkinson as just a value tight end, mostly on that DraftKings slate. 10-11 on FanDuel isn't exactly special. Minnesota defense gets a little bit interesting. They rate out pretty strongly for fantasy points, but they're a little expensive on DraftKings at 34, at 14th ranked by value, 3.7 on the FanDuel slate. Thielen and Naylor don't really rate out well, but either one of those guys can hit the board. Naylor's drawing 4 targets a game, Thielen just 2 a game. Solid average depth of target for both players. Limited involvement just with the volume that's needed to go through the primary options in this offense. But both guys getting down the field, 15.8 yard average depth of target for Thielen so far, 13 yards for Jalen Naylor. So if we're looking to air it out with Carson Wentz, or we're just looking for a cheapo +2 type guy to go with Justin Jefferson in our stack, and it's not going to be Jordan Mason or TJ Hawkinson, either one of these guys could play. I do think Naylor's the more appealing option between the two, and he's slightly cheaper on both sides, so that works. Most of those guys. Yeah, I think we can move on from this one. Game of the week, Dallas, Chicago. The Bears. Oh, great. That's a stellar punt tight end. If we're referring to Dallas Goedert as a punt, yeah, that works. What's going on, Andy? Good to see you. Making some headway through this slate, 422. We're looking to get out, 5 and change on the clock, so we get a little time with baseball today. If you're looking for those projections, they will be up on the website after this show. I was like halfway, 3/4 of the way done with them. Just had to dial everything in for the pitching projections and then get it copy pasted over to the files and uploaded to the site. So 20, 30 minutes after this show ends, you'll see baseball up on the website, but that's why we got to keep on moving. Hit the like and subscribe button for this show if you get a chance. Check out rotoscouts.com. Everything's under $1 a day. Access to football and baseball going on right now. Jake, I definitely went through that game just in the run-up. I've kind of done like a 3-stage attack here to how we're talking about this slate. But in this part of the breakdown, you haven't. These are just going alphabetically by however it's sorted. So you are yet to. I also like Alec Ayomanor. I got made fun of for spending fab money on him this week. I was like, why would I not want a potential top-end wide receiver who's seeing a strong target share? He's got excellent metrics across the board. He's large. He's fast. I didn't get it at all. Seems to be developing a connection with their potentially lousy quarterback. I don't like that offense as a whole, but I do like him. And Ridley was also showing some value there. So Dallas-Chicago, we've talked about this game quite a bit already. We'll fly through it, but a 50-point total is offset by like 3.5, 4 points above all the other games on the slate. And this is a 1-point spread. So both of these teams are expected to be involved, scoring 26, 27, 25 points, somewhere in that range. Premium quarterback on, well, at least one side in Dak Prescott. Potentially premium quarterback in Caleb Williams. Just trying not to have my heart broken by Caleb this week. I don't want to get too emotionally invested in this call, but he's projecting out great against the Dallas pass defense that has been shredded for 9.4 yards per pass attempt this season. These two teams rank 30th and 31st against the pass this year with 9.4 and 9.9 yards allowed per pass attempt. They have been awful against the pass. There's significant scoring potential through the air given the talent involved on both sides of the ball in this game, or both offensive sides in this game. It's just so ripe and going to be so popular, especially around that Caleb play, that it feels so bound to disappoint. But again, Caleb did go off for 300-plus yards in 4 different games last year. People tend to forget that. He was a lot better than advertised across those contests and a better fantasy scorer than advertised last year. Over this season's first 2 games, he's thrown the ball 30-plus times in both games. 35 attempts in the first one, 30 attempts in the second one. 1 touchdown, no interceptions in the first game. 2 touchdowns and an interception in the second game. Limited as far as the yardage output. 6 yards per pass attempt in the first one, 6.9 in the second one. Overall, it amounts to just 6.4 yards per pass attempt so far, but it comes on an 8.7 intended air yards per attempt. So it's not like they're not looking to air the ball out a little bit. I think they've got that in their game plan. You can see that a little bit in the average depth of target here as well. Several of these guys, 3 of these receivers in the double digits. You've got another 9.2 on Olamide. So these guys are getting out and trying to get down the field to catch these balls. It's an interesting offense. Got an excellent veteran receiver in DJ Moore. He's drawn 5.5 targets a game, 11.8 yard average depth of target, returning a solid 10.4 yards per target. Hasn't found the end zone yet. That's because second-year receiver Roma Dunze has found the end zone 3 times so far. Very interesting. Monster breakout potential for Rome. Remember, they drafted him in the top 10 last year to come in and just play their careers together with Caleb Williams. They need Roma Dunze to continue this breakout this season. He's been tremendous over the first 2. Caught 7 passes on 11 targets over 40 routes, 3.2 yards per route run. Scored 2 touchdowns last game. 1 touchdown the game before. 6 catches for 37 yards on 40 routes run. Just 0.93 yards per route run in that one. Something to watch, but drew a 22.5% target share that went up to 27.5% in the second game. They are calling his number frequently in this offense. And if this game just fires away for passing, if this is just a shootout, gotta love the upside for Rome. Right alongside him, though, no slouch, exactly a 14.3% target share on both 35 and 42 routes run over the first 2 games. DJ Moore caught 3 passes for 68 yards in the first one, 5 balls for 46 in the second one. Again, hasn't really produced on numbers, but 1.94 yards per route run in the first, 1.10 in the second. Not unproductive and more than capable of having a day here. DeAndre Swift is questionable to play. Just a mediocre running back anyway. He's dealing with a quad injury. Looks like he's up to expected to play, but still questionable. 4 yards per rush attempt on the season. It's been all right. He's got 1 on the end zone so far. 1.6 yards after contact per attempt. Limited involvement in the passing game. Comes in with a negative 1 point yard average depth of target that relegates him to just 2.3 yards per target. Everything is out of the backfield behind the line of scrimmage, so it just takes work to make positive contributions there. But 4 targets a game pads the potential touches, at least 18.5 potential touches per game so far. Not dead on arrival at the running back spot, but not a primo go-get-him type option either. Ranks 19-15 on DraftKings, 20-18 on FanDuel. The hell did he go? Oh, there he is. My eyes were playing tricks on me. My tired eyes. Kyle Mananjai, just in the 40s. He would have picked up value and will if DeAndre Swift doesn't go, or if the news breaks that Swift is a little bit limited and unlikely to see a full complement of touches. That makes Mananjai a little bit more interesting, but so far completely uninspiring. 4 yards per rush attempt on 3.5 attempts per game, 1.7 yards after contact, 2 targets a game. Pretty uninvolved, pretty uninspiring, but is ahead of Rashawn Johnson on the depth chart. So something to keep in mind there. Couple other rookies on the Chicago team. Colston Loveland has so far been unimpressive. First round pick for this team, was supposed to come in and steal the tight end job from Colt Kmet, and so far Kmet's outplaying him. He ranks slightly better across sites. He's played 90% of the snaps so far this season, drawing just 3 targets a game, but it comes on an 11.5 yard average depth of target, and he's put up a couple nice catches so far. Not a monster scorer at the position. Should be overtaken eventually by Loveland, but right now it's Colt Kmet's job, at least as the top option who's out there for all the blocking needs and then some of the pass catching needs. Luther Burden, they're talking about getting him more involved, but I think at this point, until we see it, he's played 18% of the snaps last week, 22% overall. Just 1.5 targets a game. Another guy. I forgot he had the 3rd in his name. Oops. Okay. Oh, that's why. One of these days I'll just build out the naming table for this. So Luther came in with a fair amount of buzz from draft season and has just been completely uninvolved out there. 1.5 targets a game, has delivered 0.7 yards per target on the limited action. Unfair to really talk about him with that little involvement. Should find some potential output once he gets involved in the offense, but right now, at best, the 4th wide receiver behind Olamide Zacchaeus, and then more to the point, Roma Dunze and DJ Moore up the depth chart. OZ, a little bit involved, 6 targets a game, 9.2 yard average depth of target, has that game-breaking ability once he gets the ball in his hands, more yards after the catch option, but getting down the field a little bit in this version of the offense, 18% of the air yards. An interesting mixer if you're going to an abundance of Chicago stacks. Doesn't rate great individually, but functions better as a part of stacks. On this side of the board, Dak's throwing the ball 43 times a game over the first 2 contests. That'll work for volume. 6.4 yards per pass attempt on a 7.9 intended air yards share. That is definitely looking to get the ball down the field a little bit more than he's succeeded in getting the ball down the field. He's connected with CeeDee Lamb on some deep looks. CeeDee's caught 8 passes a game, averaging 12 targets a game. Monster opportunity for him with a 12-yard average depth of target. CeeDee knows how to go get it among the best in football. Dak overthrew him a couple times in the, I want to say, first game. Would have come away with a better score, but has been over 100 yards in both contests. 110 in the first week on 7 catches over 13 targets, a 3.24 yards per route run, and then caught 9 passes, 1.96 yards per route run because he ran 57 routes over 77 snaps against the Giants in that outrageous shootout. Came away with 11 targets, 9 catches, and 112 yards, but hasn't found the end zone yet. It's been the one frustrating thing there. They'll get there. I have full confidence that Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb will connect in the end zone more than once during the season. George Pickens, a productive member of the offense so far. 6.5 targets a game on an 11.7 yard ADOT, puts him down the field and makes him interesting in big play territory. He's got a touchdown on the board, 22% of the air yards. The guy who I think has been the most surprising, though, Javonte Williams. Got to give him credit. 2.5 yards after contact per attempt, 4.6 yards per rush attempt on the season, 3 rushing touchdowns so far. fairly heavy involvement in the passing game. He's not much of a producer in the pass game, but sees 5 targets on average, pushes him up over 20 potential touches on any given week early in the season. He rates out as RB 12-10 on DraftKings, 10-12 on the FanDuel slate. Looks pretty playable. If you want to go in a different direction while still getting a piece of this game, I think that's an interesting option. They throw a 35-yard pass to CD, and he goes down at the 1-yard line. Guess who's punching the ball in? So that's an interesting player who, coming into 2 weeks ago, I wasn't a big fan of. But he's been productive and involved early in the season. Jake Ferguson rates as one of the top tight ends again this week. Picked up 9 targets on average, 12 in their most recent game. Hasn't found the end zone yet, but that is heavy, heavy involvement at the position, if nothing else, which is definitely appealing. In PPR scoring, that's fantastic. 9 catches in week 2 against that awful Giants team. That was on 12 targets over 42 routes. In week 1, he caught 5 balls on 6 targets, 0.85 yards per route run over 27 routes in that one. A little bit more underwhelming in that performance. More a solid game in week 2. But he's a productive tight end. He's another guy, didn't score last year. Played only 14 games, caught 59 passes on 86 targets for 494 yards, but had a very productive second season back in 2023. Played all 17, 71 catches on 102 targets, 5 touchdowns on the board. We could easily go back into that kind of territory, at least as far as the touchdown scoring goes. Yet to draw a target in the red zone. Something to keep an eye on there. We definitely want to see, if not touchdowns, at least those red zone targets emerge. But we should. Capable guy. Kevontae Turpin returns kicks and has been a productive member of the passing game. He's got a touchdown on the board on limited air yards. 6.3 yard average depth of target, but a capable guy who has game-breaking abilities once the ball's in his hands. It's part of why he returns kicks and punts. So a dynamic player, 3,900, 5,300 across sites, not a priority. Just rates as wide receiver 61-60 and 58-61. But a guy who can bend the slate a little bit if he just catches the ball, that one big play. So somebody to keep in mind as a mixer, works well as a +2 behind CD, behind George Pickens, in conjunction with one of those guys. Miles Sanders just gets backup volume, but interestingly has seen some red zone opportunities. So as just another depth running back, where you're just kind of throwing darts at like a cheap touchdown option, think like Tyler Algier, who we talked about. This is another interesting guy. He played 19 snaps in week 2, carried the ball just 5 times, gained 15 yards, but scored a touchdown. 2 red zone carries in that game. He also had 2 red zone carries in week 1. Carried the ball 4 times for 53 yards in that game. Didn't score, but 4 red zone carries across 2 weeks makes me interested. Once they get into scoring territory, it's anybody's game as far as that running back position goes. So something to keep in mind there in the breakdown between Javonte and Miles Sanders. Miles not dead behind him. Jalen Tolbert's kind of a mixer, capable of getting down the field, limited productivity. Love this game, though. Yeah, I like that spot too, Jake. Yeah, well, Ferguson. I like the Ferguson call there, and then the Baker and the Bucks against the Jets. Definitely think that's a solid spot. Bucky, I like quite a bit. Evans, like I talked about, going to be running into some tough coverage in that one again, but just a ridiculous talent that we always want to get to. 4:30, we are not getting out here at 5. All right. Defensive showdown in this one a little bit. 2 solid defenses. So far this season, the Chargers come in as the 2nd-ranked defense against the pass with 5.3 yards allowed per pass attempt. Just moderate pressure so far, but they've gained 5 sacks. They've come away with 3 interceptions as well. It's an interesting defense to throw Bo Nix and his, cadre of wide receiver 3 types against. Maybe Cortland Sutton's a wide receiver 2. But Sutton, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, it's not exactly an overwhelming wide receiver room. J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey in the running back position. You can see how this team slides down the board pretty quickly for stacks once they draw a good defense and a lower overall implied total. As stack 21-19, 24-15 by value, there's really not a ton to talk about with Denver. If you're going in that direction, for me, it's Bo Nix +1, and it's mostly Cortland Sutton. Troy Franklin has been interesting over the first 2 games. Found a little productivity as the second option in the passing game. They're going to be without Evan Ingram at the tight end spot, which thrusts Adam Troutman, Nate Adkins, Lucas Krull into the mix, but probably just ends up resulting in a couple more touches going toward the running backs and a couple potential touches going in the direction of Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin. Franklin caught 8 passes for 89 yards and a touchdown in week 2. That was over 30 routes, so 2.97 yards per route run. Had 1.69 yards per route run in the first week. Came away with 4 catches on 6 targets for 44 yards. Didn't score in that one. But again, an interesting and involved second receiver in this passing game. Cortland Sutton in the opener, 61 yards and a touchdown. Coming off of a pretty productive season last year, really came on down the stretch and started developing a connection with Bo Nix. Fell apart a little bit in week 2 this year, though. Just 1 catch for 6 yards. Disappointed a lot of fantasy owners, namely yours truly. 4 targets in that one. Ran just 19 routes, 0.32 yards per route run. Had 1.49 yards per route run in the first one. The touchdown obviously padded the scoring a little bit. He hasn't been spectacular to start the season, but he's been capable. The best part of this one is Bo Nix himself, ranking his quarterback 9 by points, but he slips by value, 15th and 10th ranked value scores. Maybe the Denver defense, as their 8th ranked defense by point scoring potential, they slip by value as well, but that is a premium defense. It's just you're throwing them up against a really good passing attack with Justin Herbert there. That is where they specialize. They're somewhat likely to shut down this passing attack, good as they are. Denver's generated a 36% pressure rate with 7 sacks so far this season. They're allowing 6.9 yards per pass attempt. That ranks 18th, but they're quite a bit better than that in the overall. 4.5 yards per rush attempt ranks 23rd. That's similar to the number on the other side. Both these teams have allowed more on the ground so far. Tremendous trio of wide receivers to work with Justin Herbert. That makes this team appealing as a stack. They rank 12th, 10th on DraftKings, 10th, 9th on FanDuel. That would be the direction I lean if I'm taking an offense out of this game. Herbert's thrown the ball 30 times a game, 30 and a half. He's thrown 5 touchdowns against no interceptions so far. An outstanding 9.2 yards per pass attempt on 9.6 intended air yards per attempt. So doing exactly what he wants to do as far as just rocketing the ball downfield to these excellent receivers. QJ's gotten in the end zone 3 times already this season. 14.4 yard average depth of target leads the team. 34% air yard share does as well, nearly 35. He's drawn 7 targets a game. He's been outstanding over the first 3. Falls in line behind Keenan Allen, behind Ladd McConkey. Both those guys have been tremendous as well. 9.2, 8.4 yard average depth of target. We've got 2 touchdowns on the board already for Keenan Allen in his return to the Chargers. 8.5 targets a game to lead the team. He's been tremendous, 7.6 yards per target, and then 8.7 yards per target for McConkey, who has yet to find the end zone, but has been heavily involved in this passing attack. I think you could put together any combination of those 2 wideouts and have a pretty good shot here if you're just choosing to target Denver and having a little bit of faith in Justin Herbert. McConkey caught 6 balls on 9 targets over 38 routes, 1.95 yards per route in the first one, 1.71 yards per route in the second one with 5 catches over 48 yards, 5 targets in that game. So productive, but less than spectacular. First couple of games from McConkey. But 3 premium options in the passing attack there. You've got Amarian Hampton on the ground. He's gained just 3.1 yards per rush attempt, 11.5 carries a game so far. He's got Najee Harris there to share time with, to loom over his shoulder while he tries to get things going on the ground. Carried the ball 15 times over 50 snaps in week 1, so he did see a dip in his overall rush volume. That came with an uptick in pass attempts, though. Overall for the season, just 2 targets in each game. Limited production so far. We'll see where it goes. Not really desirable to go to either of the running backs in this one, but if you go to one, it's probably going to be Amarian Hampton. 21-17, 22-13. The FanDuel value mark is a little interesting at 6,000, but would be touchdown dependent, and we expect that touchdown to go through one of these receivers. And then Tyler Conklin should be filling in at the tight end position as the primary with Will Dissly out. You might also see a little of Aronde Gadsden, but it's probably going to be Conklin. Over the first couple games, he's seen a little bit of involvement.
He caught 2 passes for 50 yards in week 1. Also carried the ball for a 2-yard gain. 4.55 yards per route run because he only ran 11 routes for those 50 yards. 10 routes run in the second game went untargeted. So a little bit of mix and match quality so far, but with Disley out, should take over the primary option there. Down the board, Trey Harris, dart throw at best. Gadsden's right there. He's very cheap, but doesn't project out for a ton of involvement, ton of volume. I feel like I skipped somebody in this offense, but I don't see who it was. Got all 3 receivers. Got Herbert. Yeah, I guess we talked about everybody. Talked about this side. Let's move on. There is basically nothing to like on Cleveland. David Njoku rates out okay at the tight end spot, but I'm not even completely a believer because there's at least a job share there with Harold Fannin, who also rates out okay. And when your 2 tight ends are by far the best looking thing on your team, that's not great. And when they're reliant on Joe Flacco to get them the ball, and Flacco hasn't been particularly good at doing that this year, that's not great. He's thrown 45 times a game. That's impressive volume, but has resulted in 5.4 yards per pass attempt on 6.4 intended air yards per attempt. There's just no quality there. Lost the last series to whatever the kid's name is, the rookie behind him on the depth chart. Doesn't really mean anything. He's coming back into the starting role to begin this game. But the fact that he was out for a series at the end of the game in week 2 is not exactly encouraging for future prospects for this offense. Jerry Jeudy's a capable wide receiver. He does rate 13th, 15th by value. There's a little bit of potential production there. He's been targeted 8 times on a 12.6 yard average depth of target in each of the first 2 games. But again, reliant on Joe Flacco to deliver the ball. Cedric Tillman's had a little bit of quality. He scored twice already this season. He was a buzzy player, given a stretch of 3 good games last year in an injury-marred season. Whoops. So far this year, Tillman came away with 1 touchdown in each game. Ran 45 routes in the first game, 1.16 yards per route run with 5 catches over 8 targets, 52 yards on the board. Really underwhelmed in the second game. He did get in the end zone, played 69 snaps with the offense, ran 49 routes and was targeted 7 times. Came away with just 2 of those for 22 yards and a touchdown. I don't have in front of me the accurate target numbers for Flacco, but I can't imagine they were very good. So you do have to take away a little bit from him and give it back to Cedric Tillman in that mix. But overall, again, you have to rely on Flacco to get him the ball, and that is variable at best, being nice about it. And then we haven't even touched on this team's ugly. They have the 2-headed tight end, and they have a 3-headed running back situation going on right now. It's just not a lot to like here. We should see Quinshon Judkins emerge as the lead running back as time goes on. He was drafted 36th overall in the beginning of the second round this year. Missed week 1. Signed ahead of week 2. Played 19 snaps with the offense. Gained 61 yards out of the shell on 10 carries. Not bad. 10 yards on 3 of 3 receiving over 8 routes run. And again, should emerge a little bit more. That was 19 snaps. You see him play a little bit more with the offense, and you see a little bit of the job share with Jerome Ford and with Dylan Sampson go away around the edges. That was an interesting split. In week 1, Sampson was targeted aggressively in the passing game, and Ford handled a little bit more on the ground. And then with the return of Judkins last week, that shifted where Ford handled some of the passing game. He picked up 6 targets in that game. Sampson slid down the board, picked up just 3 targets. So there's a clear pecking order where Ford is number 2, Sampson is number 3. They project out somewhat similarly just because of those similar numbers over the first 2 weeks. I'm not really interested in either guy, but I do think that the volume would slightly favor Jerome Ford in this situation, despite where the pricing lands with the perception of Sampson being more involved in the passing game. I think that was just because of how the running back room was structured in that week 1 game. But overall, this is a bad Cleveland team. Much more interesting team to talk about on the other side. For one, Josh Jacobs. Just an excellent option to any given slate at the running back position. If you're just struggling to figure out while possessing a fair amount of money, If you're just struggling to figure out what running back to put in your lineup, Jacobs is a good name to default to. Dude just finds the end zone. What are we up to? 9 consecutive games with touchdowns now? Just 3.6 yards per rush attempt, but his volume is sick. 21 carries a game. Scored twice, once in each of the first 2 games. 1.6 yards after contact per attempt is okay. Again, the efficiency is not great. The explosiveness, not great. But 21 carries is fantastic. Among the leaders in just pure rush attempts. Not involved in the passing game, really. Just a half a target a game over the first 2. But we'll take what we want out of Josh Jacobs. That also splits him off a little bit from the stack. You can play him in stacks because there is correlation there, regardless of whether he scores a rushing or a receiving touchdown, just getting up and down the field. But he stands alone pretty effectively from the rest of this offense. And he also affords you the ability to take shares of Jordan Love, not worry about the running back spot, and just focus on the premium pass catchers that he works with there. So I like having a bell cow running back where there's just not much consideration going toward the passing game, like what Josh Jacobs gives you. Jordan Love and a capable downfield thrower, 9.1 yards per pass attempt so far this season completed. 12.5 intended air yards per attempt. He has taken shots when they let him, but he's only thrown the ball 26.5 times per game. He's been playing with handcuffs on. It's kind of weird because he's super capable. And he's got good receivers to get down the field and go get that ball. So far in the season, look at these monster ADOT numbers. Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Dontavian Wicks, everybody can go get that ball. So I like those options. Like I mentioned, Romeo Doubs, really interesting. Another player I added off the wire this week. Was in that same text message when they were making fun of me for picking up, spending fab money on Io Manor. I said, am I also not supposed to pick up the presumptive number 1 for Green Bay and Jordan Love? Why would you guys not bid on him? Per our pals over at Pros and their excellent weekly primer column, which I highly recommend reading, Dobbs ranks 4th out of 96 receivers in separation this year and 3rd in route win rate out of 96 receivers. 2.34 yards per route run. Solid first read share. But he has not exploded in a way that's commensurate with that separation and those route win rates yet. If they allow Jordan Love to throw the ball down the field, this is going to be the guy who goes and gets it. So love that combination. And the hope would be that a little bit affordable Romeo Doubs, 34.24 on DraftKings, 33.28 on FanDuel, can crush those value marks at low ownership here. That is an interesting combo. But all these receivers, again, do go down the field to get the ball. Matthew Golden, the rookie, premium draft pick capital. So far over his first couple games, just drawing a couple of targets. Come on. I think it's 2 per game. Why isn't this loading? This is annoying. Like I said earlier, this is why I tend to grab these before the show. There we go. That's what it was. It was two targets, 2 catches in week 1 over his 13 routes run on 22 snaps. Went up to 37 snaps in week 2. Was targeted the same 2 times. Didn't catch either of those, but he ran the ball twice in that one. So he still came away with 2 touches over 26 routes run. Just wasn't through the air. 0.0 yards per route run, 15 yards from scrimmage in that one, 16 yards from scrimmage in the first one. So not a lot of production so far. He has worked up that massive average depth of target, though. So again, when we're just looking for guys who can get up and get down the field for a monster scoring play, Golden's on that list, and Dontavian Wicks already was on that list. Wicks operating on an 18 and change yard average depth of target to start the season. Up to number 3 on the depth chart with multiple injuries in the receiver room again. But that is one of the benefits of having such a deep receiver core like this team does. Last season, Wicks caught 5 touchdown passes on just 39 total catches, over 76 targets in his 17 games. Year before, 4 touchdowns on 39 catches over 15 games. So again, just a guy who can come down with the ball in the end zone down the field for a big score. You only need one of those to really change a slate. If you can get more than one, so be it. He's been involved in the passing game. 6 targets in last week's game, 4 on average. Luke Musgrave, the likely tight end in the event that Tucker Kraft doesn't play. Between the two, we greatly prefer Tucker Kraft, but Luke Musgrave, not incapable out there. 1.5 targets a game, drawing an 8.7 yard average depth of target so far this season. Came away with 2 catches for 32 yards last week. Ran 6 routes over his 20 snaps with the offense, but would be more involved than that. I do think that we'd probably see a little bit of a situation where it becomes less of a premium. This is a play for our tight end to go down the field and get open, and he's just more a functional tight end, and they're throwing those looks to the top end wide receivers a little bit more aggressively. But the lack of an involved pass-catching running back does keep the tight end in play here. You do have Chris Brooks as a capable pass catcher out of the backfield, though. He gets out there for a few opportunities a game. So far at the beginning of the season, he played 9 snaps with the offense in week 1. I broke all this down in the article. It's just like loosely in my head, but not exactly in there. So I'm trying to mine those without having to click, and I'm coming up short. 9 snaps in week 1, 11 snaps in week 2. Carried the ball once, but caught 1 pass for 2 yards in the first game. Ran 2 routes. Ran 8 routes in the second game. Caught 3 of 4 targets for 27 yards, 3.38 yards per route run. Again, not massively productive, but a couple targets here and there keeps him on the field. Loosely involved, but not really a DFS play by any means. Flacco might die. He might be trying to die out on the football field at this age. So yeah, really don't like much from Cleveland. Like a lot of Green Bay, but we just need them to take the handcuffs off Jordan Love. Otherwise, it's Josh Jacobs' day again. He's just the easy way to go with this offense. Super productive. Top 10 rating across the board on both sites. I would much rather get to the passing game, but I want those assurances that it's going to come through. Both these teams have been stout against the run to start the season, by the way. That could impact a little bit against Jacobs. Cleveland's one positive attribute is that they've allowed 2.1 yards per rush attempt so far. They've also generated 6 sacks at 21.3% pressure rate. Maybe it results in a little bit more passing. Probably not. Houston, Jacksonville. I'm interested in Nico Collins shares mostly as a bring back in my Jacksonville stacks. We need to get Brian Thomas Jr. going. That will unlock this entire Jacksonville offense. So far, he's been atrocious over 2 games. Trevor Lawrence, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad mixed in. But the fact that he's had okay performances without Brian Thomas being heavily involved is at least a positive indicator in my mind. In the first game, Lawrence came out, threw for 178 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. A lot better than that in game 2. Completed 24 of 42 pass attempts for 271 yards, threw 3 touchdowns, but lost 2 interceptions. 3 passes over 20 yards, 1 over 40 yards. There's production there. It's a capable player. He's got some good weapons in that offense. Travis Etienne has emerged, but he's also got now Bashal Tutin pushing him for quality, the explosive runner there. We've got quality up and down the receiver room. Diami Brown having a standout start to his season. Wouldn't expect it to really continue in any earnest sense, but he's been in the end zone. He's been a heavily involved target. 10.1 yard average depth of target to go down the field and get the ball a little bit. Travis Hunter, minimally involved. Well, minimally is the wrong word. He's been involved for volume. He's seen 7 targets on average. He picked up 6 last week, but it's a lot of work underneath. Just using him sparingly in that role. 6.6 yard average depth of target. Kid's a two-way player. He gets burnt out a little bit playing defense. He played something like 60% of the defensive snaps last week. So I think that has an impact in the overall. It'll be interesting to see where that goes for his long-term production. Hasn't been great to start out as a receiver, but has been regularly involved. Just 3.9 yards per target to start the career, 4.5 catches a game. But yeah, it really is all about getting Thomas going. After 1,282 yards and 10 touchdowns in 17 games last year, 87 catches on 133 targets. Over 2 weeks, he's got 5 catches for 60 yards. No touchdown. Targeted 7 times in the offense in week 1, 12 times in the offense in week 2. 1.26 yards per route run over 39 yards over 39 routes in week 2. Came away with just 4 of 12 targets, with Lawrence throwing kind of a mixed bag of accuracy at him. A little bit of the quarterback's fault, a little bit on him as well. But this is an excellent receiver. The hope would be that he comes up a little bit cheap and a little bit under-owned. They're going up against a pass defense that's allowed 6.9 yards per pass attempt this season. That's kind of a middle-of-the-board type number. They're sub 20% pressure rate. Trevor Lawrence should be able to stand tall and find his receivers in this one. So I like the upside for combining him in plus ones at least. I think plus twos are very viable around Thomas Etienne, Thomas Hunter, maybe a little bit of either one of those guys, and Diami Brown or Brenton Strange, who I didn't mention at the tight end spot. Strange was an interesting sleeper. Had a productive week 1, fell off the board a little bit in week 2. We'll see where he goes, but should be an involved tight end for a cheap price, if nothing else, in this offense when we look in this direction. Keeps him involved in stacks, less so as a standalone player in other lineups. I don't think Brown, like I said, continues to be much of a standout. I wouldn't be going out there and plugging him into too many non-stacked lineups, but he has been the third option in this passing attack. 5 catches for 57 and a touchdown, over 32 routes run in week 2, 1.78 yards per route run. And on his 3 catches for 52 yards in week 1, he only ran 25 routes. So that's 2.08 yards per route run. Again, not nothing, but a more limited option as far as the actual talent goes. Nico, an overwhelming talent on the Houston side, ranks 6th overall among wide receivers for scoring, slips to 28th and 13th by points per dollar, but when we're just one-offing him, it doesn't matter quite as much. CJ Stroud, productive 2 years ago, disappointing season last year, limited over 2 performances to start this year, 25.5 pass attempts a game isn't paying the bills. 7.7 yards per pass attempt is all right, but it comes on 6.8 intended air yards per attempt, so he's actually trying to throw the ball shorter than he's resulted in. 1 touchdown, 1 interception on the board, limited output so far. Nico caught that touchdown. He's seen 7 targets a game. He's easily the most involved, the most interesting offensive player on this unit. He put up 52 yards in the score last week, doubling his yardage output from week 1 when he had 25 yards on 3 catches. 0.83 yards per route run that week, 2 yards per route run last week in a much more Nico-like performance. He was targeted 9 times and only came away with 3 of them, though. Again, a little impact there from the accuracy of the QB more than anything else. Christian Kirk, just kind of a mid-board type talent, but probably set to outdo Jaden Higgins and Xavier Hutchinson down the lineup here. Kirk didn't play in each of the first 2 games. Played 8 games last year, gained 379 yards on 27 catches, scored 1 touchdown. 57 catches in this offense for 787 yards 2 years ago, scored 3 touchdowns. Or excuse me, not this offense, for Jacksonville's offense, the opposing offense. But scored just 3 touchdowns. He had 1 standout season. That was 2022, 8 touchdowns, 1,100 yards on 84 catches. And then he was okay in 21 with 982 yards and 5 touchdowns. Again, he's a productive guy. If he's your, second, third wide receiver, you're okay. You're not thrilled about it, but you're okay. For DFS purposes, especially in his first game back after limited production last year, I'm pretty skeptical. I don't need to go run off and grab too many Christian Kirk shares when he slots in 47.56 and 47.46 across sites. I'm much more interested in just running off with another pocket full of Nico shares in that event. Nick Chubb, just 24th ranked at the running back position. Mediocre. 52% of the snaps on average, gaining 4.1 yards per rush attempt on 12.5 carries. Very limited involvement in the passing game. Again, he did get in the end zone last week. We're very proud of him. His game amounted to 43 yards on 12 carries. Caught 2 balls for another 29 yards. Over 9 routes run. Week 1, he played 28 snaps. Carried the ball 13 times, gained 60 yards. As long as he's over 4 yards per attempt, the efficiency's okay. But the explosiveness, 1.4 yards after contact, just meh. It's just not a running back I want to be getting to. And the involvement is limited at best. He's got Woody Marks pushing him a little bit for shares. Dario Ogunbowale fell off the board a little bit last week. But Marks got a little involved in the passing game. He picked up 1 target, caught it for 37 yards. But he was out there for routes. He ran 8 routes over just 13 snaps. So a little bit of involvement in the passing game. But that's about it for Woody Marks. Cheap pricing, but not all overly appealing unless he happens to trip and fall into the end zone. Dalton Schultz, poorly ranked for a tight end that once upon a time, a little bit of a fan of. So far this year, 4.5 targets a game on a 5-yard average depth of target, 6.3 yards per target. Hasn't found the end zone yet this year. Limited as far as touchdown scoring overall. Just don't really like this Houston team right now. They rate out poorly too. Stacked 19-20 by points. Worse than that for value on DraftKings. They do pop up the board a little bit for value on the FanDuel slate. Largely because Nico is affordable. And I guess CJ Stroud is as well. 13th, but 8th ranked by value. It's a playable but not overly appealing Houston team. They're going up against the Jacksonville defense that has limited opponents to 5.9 yards per pass attempt this year and 3.8 yards per rush attempt. Again, very, very small sample numbers. Not necessarily going to hold, but they've been decent enough to start the season, and this is a low-end team. I lean strongly toward Jacksonville in this one. $5:05. Too many games to go. Indy, Tennessee. All right, here it is. Whoever asked about it. Ooh, JSN came up questionable. Did we have that already? I forget. That's not great. So the Tennessee side, Cam Ward has not been good so far. 30 pass attempts per game, completing just 4.7 yards per pass attempt, but an 8.3 intended air yards per attempt is not bad. 1 touchdown on the board, just completing 51% of his passes for under 150 yards per game so far is not exactly the picture of an NFL caliber quarterback, but he's developing a little bit of a connection with Elikeli Ayomanor, as we mentioned before. Makes him somewhat interesting now that he's identified a target that he can connect with. He's got a stud receiver in what's left of Calvin Ridley. Last time out, he did show improvement. Went from 112 yards on 42.9% passing in week 1 to 175 on 57.6% passing. Threw a touchdown, yet to throw an interception. He even ran the ball. Got rid of his Frady scares about running the ball. He took off with it 4 times last week, gained 2 yards per attempt for a total of 8 yards. Not exactly a monster so far in the running game. Has thrown the ball 6 times in the red zone, came away with just the 1 touchdown so far. But a developing passer that they've obviously sank monster draft capital into and are big believers in. You got to think that he produces at some point, even if it's just in flashes. So I think drips and drabs of Cam Ward, mostly as a access point to get to cheap Calvin Ridley and Alec Ayomanor in stacks. But really, both of those receivers function very, very well on their own in other lineups. Ayomanor is wide receiver 44 by points, but wide receiver 5 by value on DraftKings. That's a major step up in class when it comes to the value number versus the points number. 38-23, no slouch on FanDuel for value. And then Ridley, 21-6 on DraftKings, 18 and top-ranked value receiver on the FanDuel slate. Again, Cam Ward has to get these guys the ball, but they are interesting receivers. Ridley, 1,000 yards last year. Scored 4 times in this offense. Played all 17. Played all 17 in Jacksonville the year before, another 1,000-yard season, scored 8 times that year. So rumors of his demise, pretty exaggerated. 57 yards on 3 catches last week. Ran 32 routes, 1.78 yards per route run. Yet to find the end zone, but was targeted in the red zone. He'll come away with some touchdowns. He'll come away with some big plays on the season. So far operating at a 10.6 yard average depth of target that aligns with, but is a little shorter than his numbers from the last couple seasons. Still capable of getting up and getting down the field and getting up and getting down the field. Whatever. Capable of getting down the field. It's just a matter of where Cam Ward's going to be able to deliver the ball too early in his career. I think that might be the limiting factor there. Tyler Lockett, not really involved in this passing game. Nobody down the depth chart is overly important to the passing game at all. But we do have Alec Manor there, who again, 4 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown in his most recent outing. Was targeted 6 times in that week 2 game. Was targeted 7 times in week 1 as well against Denver. Just came away with only 2 of those balls for 13 yards. So limited output in week 1, but they were out there looking for him and calling his number. He's a 6'2" rookie out of Stanford, 4th round pick, 136th overall. But a developing connection. He ranks as where's the nearest place I have those numbers? Nearly 25% target share on his routes run, 40% air yard share over his first 2 games, 2.24 yards per route run and a touchdown in the second game. And that was everything I said to the text message thread when they made fun of me for spending fab on him. Not going to let that go. So I like the Ayomanor combo there. Chigakonkwo, just kind of an afterthought. Does rate okay for value on either site, but entirely touchdown dependent, and he hasn't been finding many of those lately. Lockett just kind of washed, totally unproductive over the first couple games. 53% of the snaps, just a 6.8 yard average depth of target, 5% of the air yards. Pretty limiting. On this side, as mentioned, not a big believer in Danny Dimes, but he's gotten it done twice in a row with pretty decent games. Throwing for 294 yards per game. He's only thrown 2 touchdown passes, though. If you just need something suspicious to point to immediately, he's run the ball in 3 times in those big performances so far. Something to watch. 9.3 yards per pass attempt is undeniably good. 8.3 yard intended air yards per attempt. Gaining a lot of value out of Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, and the quality that they play the sport with. 7-yard ADOT on the board for Michael Pittman. He's got a touchdown scored. 17.6 yard ADOT for Alec Pierce. Again, just the nuclear weapon in this offense. Gets down the field like crazy. And if Danny Dimes can find him down there, that'll pay dividends. In between, you get Josh Downs operating shorter yardage, 6.5 yard average depth of target, but picks up 5.5 targets per game. Saw 8 targets and a little bit of an uptick last year. Last week. And we got there a few times last year with Josh Downs in our lineups. So that's another interesting receiver. Michael Pittman still the nominal lead, 6.5 targets a game overall for the season, 5 last week, but I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, leads the team in first read share. Don't quote me on that. Either way, one of the first read options in this offense. Tyler Warren has picked up 8 targets a game. That's what threw me momentarily there when I was saying he was the team lead. Warren's 8 targets a game at the tight end spot have resulted in 9.7 yards per target on the season. Hasn't found the end zone yet, but a productive downfield option at the position, 6.4 yard average depth of target, giving him 19 and change percent of the air yards. That is an interesting tight end option. He rates as tight end 4 on DraftKings by points, tight end 3 across the FanDuel slate. So we can definitely consider some Tyler Warren shares. A lot of lineups are in for the baseball slate that we haven't put projections up yet for, but we will. Come on. And no injury designation for Warren. I don't know why I was thinking there was one. And then Jonathan Taylor, the go-to option at the running back position here. If we take anything out of this team, it's Taylor for me. 25 carries last week for 165 yards. Caught 2 passes for another 50 yards on top of that and a touchdown, so over 200 yards from scrimmage. Ran 28 routes last week, 24 routes the week before. 62 snaps, 51 snaps, just an absolute bell cow running back. Tons of volume in both departments, major ability to produce. Running back 3 by points on both sides, and deservedly so. He's gained 5.5 yards per rush attempt this season, 21.5 carries a game. 3.4 yards after contact per rush attempt is outstanding so far. So Jonathan Taylor on his own. Jonathan Taylor in stacks, out of stacks. Alec Pierce shares in conjunction with one of the other receivers, and Daniel Jones works. There are things to like about Indy. 13-6 on DraftKings, 12-12 on FanDuel as a stack. Can't believe there are 5 games to go. Jalen Hurts up near the top of the board despite kind of a lack of production at the quarterback spot so far this season. Just 5.6 yards per pass attempt, 6 intended air yards per attempt. If we're going to harp on it for other players, we got to at least mention it for a high-quality guy like Jalen Hurts. No touchdowns, no interceptions, 126.5 yards. Not really getting it done through the air, but he's punched the ball in 3 times on the ground to at least measure up to Daniel Jones. 3.3 yards per rush attempt, the ability to punch one in short yardage, the ability to take one around and, on a naked boot and score that way. Just tremendous with his legs, but needs to start throwing the ball a little bit more aggressively. I think A.J. Brown would agree with that. Devontae Smith would probably agree with that. Neither guy has found the end zone yet. Not a lot of productivity there with 4.5 targets apiece. Just limited output to those positions so far. Saquon has eaten up a ton of volume. He's carried the ball 20 times a game, but gaining just 3.7 yards per attempt. Uncharacteristically low efficiency mark to start the season. He scored twice on the ground so far, and I thought he had a touchdown in the game in the passing attack, but I guess not. 3.5 targets a game though does keep him heavily involved in the passing attack. He remains one of the top weekly options at the running back position and easily could lead this team. He's RB4 by points on both sides, but he's expensive. A lot of back and forth between these two. Just depends on what you're looking for, value or fantasy point production. Get a little bit more potential production out of AJ at a higher points per dollar price. Devonta Smith is right there as a 1A to AJ's 1, though. Both players tremendous as far as getting down the field. Again, drawing 4.5 targets a game so far this season. Neither guy has found the end zone, but give them time. They will. Dallas Goedert, as somebody mentioned, as a value tight end. Kind of interesting. It's fairly affordable at 37 on DraftKings. Rates just 16.22. Might give that a look. Not exactly a monster value mark there at a very low price. 7.54 in the DraftKings projection. Should boost them a little bit more, I would have thought. Just 18.21 on FanDuel. That is a fairly highly targeted option in this passing attack, though, and somebody that they'll look for in the red zone, if nothing else. So in an offense where they haven't been throwing the ball into the end zone all that often, he's got equal opportunity to score a touchdown. And then Jahan Dotson. Just kind of a wild card option in this offense. He's drawn 2 targets a game early in the season. 10.5 yard average depth of target is kind of interesting, though. Had a productive first week. Come on. Too many clicks. Dotson caught, I want to say, 3 passes in the first game. 3 passes for 59 yards, cratered to just 1 catch for 4 yards last time out. That was over 21 snaps, 19 routes run. Week 1, he played 28 snaps with the offense, ran 21 routes, delivered 2.81 yards per route run in that stretch. Didn't score, but caught all 3 of his targets in a productive game. If we just see that kind of action from him, we could have a productive day if he finds the end zone as just a depth option in a +2 type stack. Not a guy you want to go out and drop into other lineups, but as the third man into a Hurts +2, definitely capable, and he's going to be way lower owned as a difference maker. On this side, it's all about those 3 top options in the passing game. Both Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams are strong options who draw a ton of targeting. 10+ targets a game for both of those receivers. Between those two and then having Kyren Williams demanding the ball at running back, there's just nothing else to go around to anybody else in this game, in this offense. 110 yards a game, 8.3 yard average depth of target for Puka, 9.9 yard average depth of target, and 78.5 yards per game for Devontae Adams. Monster air yard shares. Puka yet to find the end zone. Adams has been in there once. Adams is out there still winning routes. People are willing to write him off, and that is incorrect. He is still a talented receiver even in his early mid-30s. Ranks 11th by points, 12th by value on both sites. Puka soars all the way to number 2 by points, 10th and 8th by value. Those are premium options at the receiver position, and Matthew Stafford can get them the ball. Completing 71% of his pass attempts, 3 touchdowns and an interception on the season, 8.8 yards per pass attempt to make the point. Again, everybody after Kyren Williams just suffers for volume. There are very few opportunities for even Tyler Higbee, let alone the Jordan Whittingtons, the Tutu Atwells of the world. Dart throws at best down the depth chart. Kyren, not my favorite option at running back, really needs to see the ball 18 to 20 times to find any kind of success, and is very touchdown dependent. He's got a rushing touchdown on the season. Just 3.8 yards per rush attempt shows the inefficiency. 17.5 carries a game shows the volume, and he picks up another couple opportunities in the passing game. But it's really all about him carrying the ball 20 times or so in the rushing game for him to really find production. So when I go to Rams, I'm really looking at those 3 as a unit. And then maybe if I'm playing Kyren, it's mostly in just one-off shares in other lineups. Not a big priority in stacks of Rams. They're going up against a Philly offense that has allowed a lot of rush yardage so far, 5.0 yards per rush attempt, and just 6 yards per pass attempt to rank 7th. So maybe it does swing a little bit in Kyren's favor for that, but I'm just a much bigger believer in Stafford, Nakua, and Devontae Adams. And I think that this one takes to the air like the implied total would suggest, then maybe we do see a little bit of a shootout between Jalen Hurts and Matthew Stafford. So hopefully that keeps both these teams engaged. 2 high-end teams that rank out fairly well, 5th and 2nd by points, dip a little bit by value. Los Angeles taking the much bigger value dip overall. Vegas and Washington. Geno checking in at mediocre numbers, has been pretty mediocre to start the season. 7 yards per pass attempt, 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions is not going to pay the bills. Throwing the ball pretty aggressively, 38.5 pass attempts per game, but not really finding much success outside of some yardage so far in the season. He's got Brock Bowers, an excellent weapon at the tight end spot. Jacoby Myers is an interesting wide receiver who ranks 4th on the value board on FanDuel, 15th by points, 16 and 11 on DraftKings. Definitely keeps him in play. He's played 93% of the snaps. He's drawn 11 targets per game, 12 targets last week. Monster involvement for Myers. He's yet to find the end zone this season, but found it a few times last year. Deep target, 8.3 yard average depth, 28% of the air yards. Trey Tucker garners a fair air yard share on fewer targets, 5.5 targets a game, but an 11.2 yard air yard share, or 11.2 yard ADOT. 1 touchdown on the board this season. And then down the depth chart, with a ridiculous 25 and change average depth of target and 31% of the air yards on 4 targets a game, Dante Thornton Jr. Like everything about the way he spells Dante. D-O-N-T''E. Not sure what letters we're leaving out. I'd love to ask. But the kid's been interesting with getting down the field. Mediocre projection, mediocre ranking. Not going to really pop off the board. But if you're just considering cheapo options across an abundance of lineups, it's a guy you can throw in, given the explosive nature of the plays that are created for him, kind of like an Alec Pierce type thought. If you're building a bunch of Geno stacks, and you're tired of piling up Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker combinations, mix it up a little bit with some Dante in there. We just need him to find that one big connection. He's played 81% of the snaps last week, 71% overall. He's been involved. It's not a total dart throw. I mean, it is, but it's not an unjustifiable total dart throw. Michael Mayer operating behind Brock Bowers, seeing limited involvement, 25, 28, 24, 26 at the tight end spot. Would really need to come down with 1 in the end zone to find any kind of real value. 3 targets a game, 3.5 yard average depth of target. There's not a lot there. Ashton Jeanty, 13, 14 in the fantasy scoring rankings, 20th and 14th in the value ratings. Just 2.7 yards per rush attempt over 15 carries in his first 2 NFL games. That is not special. A lot of draft capital went into the kid, though, so we'll continue to see him. He's got a rushing touchdown on the board. He's been involved, but loosely so in the passing game. A negative 5.2 yard average depth of target hurts your ability to produce. Just 0.5 yards per target so far. But obviously a little bit of that is just about where he's catching the ball in relation to the line of scrimmage. Bowers, 8 targets a game, yet to score. Solid average depth of target at 8.2 yards, obviously coming off the monster season last year. The top priority in this offense, but that's an interesting two-man right there. It makes for interesting +2s with Geno. It's the direct path that everybody will take when going to this team, and they do have a couple mixers in the bunch, but those are your top two priorities with a bullet. Again, Marcus Mariota 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever that was, ran for 400 and change yards and a handful of touchdowns in his last regular duties as a quarterback in the NFL. Interesting enough to fill the skill gap left by Jaden Daniels here. Ranks as quarterback 1 by value on DraftKings while sitting at 19th by fantasy points, 18-3 on the FanDuel slate. Terry McLaurin, a premium receiver, somewhat hampered by the presence of Mariota at the quarterback position. Same deal for Debo. Between the two, I kind of like the safety valve nature of Debo a little bit with the backup quarterback in play. He operates on just a 4.7 yard average depth of target and makes explosive plays after the catch, where McLaurin needs somebody to get him the ball down the field a little bit more on a 14.4 yard average depth of target. He's an outstanding receiver, and we will see him contribute in big ways throughout the season. But it's just a little bit less likely with Mariota slinging it, I think, this week. So lean slightly toward Debo. Both guys extremely talented. Would not surprise to see Mariota succeed in a +2 configuration with both those guys. But early in the season, Debo's been slightly more productive anyway, and we just lean that direction on just the nature of how I think they play this game. Mentioned Austin Eckler blew out the leg at the end of the week 2 game, so unfortunate probably end to that career, but it starts a new career with Bill Krosky-Moret here. Ranks 22nd and 19th by points, but skips up to 9th on the FanDuel value board, 16th on the DraftKings value board. He's just played 27% of the snaps on average, carrying the ball 7 times a game for a ridiculous 7.1 yards per rush attempt. A lot of that came against the New York Giants. 3.2 yards after contact per attempt so far is obviously outstanding, but will probably come down over time. Does get a little bit of push down the depth chart with Chris Rodriguez there, with Jeremy McNichols there. But I think now this is going to be his job to lose. They don't have a ton of draft capital in them. 7th round pick, 245th overall. Coming out of Arizona. I got like a pet hair sticking in my nose. So not a ton of draft capital, but he got a lot of buzz capital, if that makes sense, through training camp. Just became a very buzzy player that the media was asking the coaching staff about a lot. Just, somebody that got sticky and carried the ball 10 times in week 1, 82 yards and a touchdown against the Giants. Fell down the board quite a bit. Just 4 carries on 15 snaps with the offense in week 2 against Green Bay, 17 yards, picked up 1 target on 9 routes in that game. He was targeted once over 7 routes, yet to catch a ball in the NFL. So up and down performances, but obviously showed the explosiveness that the team likes in that week 1 game, and going to be handed the ball at least to start out here. So interesting player for just 5,500 across sites. Rates out pretty well for value. Zach Ertz still commands targets in this offense. Should see some opportunities in the red zone. That's an interesting touchdown-dependent tight end who ranks as tight end 11 on both sites. Sees better value scoring on the FanDuel slate. Would not be overly interested in Chris Rodriguez, Jeremy McNichols. Jalen Lane, pretty limited as far as that rating goes. He's drawn a couple targets. Just a 6.5 yard average depth of target. Another guy they're looking to see succeed after the catch a little bit with a dynamic skill set. That kind of limits him when you've already got guys doing that in this offense. Similarly ranked teams on both sides, but on a talent basis, would definitely lean toward Washington, even with Mariota in the picture. Is there that much daylight in terms of NFL talent between Marcus Mariota and Geno Smith, who has seen more regular starting action in his career? I would argue there's probably not. New Orleans, Seattle. We just have all the garbage games at the end. Jets, Tampa, Pittsburgh, New Orleans. Not great. At least we get to talk Tampa. So JSN, now questionable. That's problematic. The go-to option in this passing attack for sure. Sammy Darnold's going to have some problems if JSN isn't out there for him, because the rest of this passing attack, Cooper Kupp, Torrey Horton, AJ Barner, and Elijah Arroyo splitting the tight end role. We get down to Jake Bobo, who is a large physical presence on the field, but not much of a receiver over time. So yeah, they need JSN out there. 11.5 targets per game so far this season. Saw 10 last week, 9.9 yards per target, over 100 and change yards per game on the season, 12.2 yard average depth. Went from third wide receiver to premium top option on this team in about a year. Ranked third on the DraftKings slate, fifth on FanDuel, and a big part of what has this team ranked in the top 10 as far as stack scoring and in the top 10 as far as stack value against New Orleans here. If he goes away, this team goes down dramatically as far as that stack roll goes, and we're just interested in Kenny Walker at that point. Walker, again, with Zach Charbonnet out, should dominate the carries here. Ranks 9th by points, 3rd by value on DraftKings, 8th by points, 4th by value on the FanDuel slate. So far this season, gaining 5.4 yards per rush attempt over 11.5 carries per game, 3.2 before, 2.3 yards after contact per attempt. He's got a rushing touchdown on the board in the season. Should see a little uptick in the passing game as well. That is a highly capable running back who should be back to full touches here. Cooper Kupp is cheap, ranks out okay. He played 78% of the snaps on average, 69% last week. He picked up 9 targets in the last game. Nice uptick from the weaker performance in the first game. Come on. He's just, if memory serves, before this loads, not winning routes out there. A little bit more limited for that. It's in the article. Did have a decent production day. Caught 7 of 9 targets for 90 yards last week. 3.46 yards per route run. Big uptick from the 0.71 on 2 catches, 15 yards on 3 targets over 21 routes against San Fran in week 1. What was the Kupp note I'm thinking of, though? Well, I'm not going to find it, and that gives you a reason to go check out the group's optimizers and game notes article that I worked literally all night on. Go give that a look over at rotoscouts.com. Under $1 a day gets you access behind the paywall. NFL and MLB going on right now. NBA, NHL not too far away. Torrey Horton's seen interesting depth of target so far. Just 2 targets per game, but saw 4 last week. Saw 4 overall. Divided by 2, that would be 2 targets per game. 19.8 yard average depth of target. Got into the end zone on a big play. Little bit of ability there. Would become more interesting if JSN doesn't play. If he does go, I don't think we see too much volume here. The 5th round pick, 6'2", 196 pounds. It's 5 targets. Two games. 4 targets last week. This says 5. But those numbers come from the same place. That's weird. Love it when these things conflict like that. One source saying 5 targets last week, the other one saying 4, but they come from the same website, so you figure it out. Given the loose involvement in the touchdown on the board last week, again, if we don't get JSN out there, maybe Horton sees a little involvement and does have that solid depth of target, would probably replace that role that JSN would be abandoning. So that gets him on the board as a depth option for Sammy Darnold. It's just Sammy Darnold throwing him the ball. Mix and match quality overall. On the other side, Alvin Kamara remains a star. 16 carries a game for 4.5 yards per rush attempt, 3.4 before contact, just 1.1 yards after contact per attempt. Still heavily involved in the pass game as well. 6 targets in last week's game, 4 on average to start the season. Negative 2 yard average depth of target because he catches behind the line of scrimmage and then makes things happen, but heavily involved and capable of breaking off those ridiculous, 3-4 touchdown performances like we've seen over the years. Still has that in him, fairly priced on both sides. Chris Olave's been really involved, 11.5 targets a game, 9.5 yard average depth of target, 40% of the air yards. Still capable of winning routes, getting out there and making the big catch. Just Spencer Rattler throwing them the ball. Rattler did have a decent performance last week. He put up 207 yards, but threw 3 touchdowns on 34 pass attempts, completed 25 of them. Limited as far as the yardage goes, 6.1 yards per pass attempt is nothing special, but the 3 touchdowns obviously make a difference. Rashid Shaheed, a good downfield receiver who's been a little bit limited by the quarterback play. And then Juwan Johnson, a priority target at the tight end spot. 10 targets on average, 9 last week, 7.2 yard average depth of target. So he's a downfield tight end. He's got a touchdown on the board, 26% of the air yard share on this offense. Ranks as tight end 7-6 on DraftKings, 5-7 on FanDuel. Everybody else on this team dips pretty significantly into, at best, the 70s in their positional rankings. There's no appeal down the depth chart. So really, Olave, Shaheed, Johnson as your trio of guys to pair with Rattler. Kamara goes into stacks, but he also stands on his own. Any one of these guys on his own is fine. Johnson might be your most interesting guy there, but is also probably your highest owned guy. I think Olave actually gives you a little bit more thread the needle in between ability, ceiling, score potential, and probably a fairly significant lack of ownership. The Jets with Tyrod Taylor at the quarterback spot. Tyrod's just kicking around backup roles for New York teams. He was relevant a couple seasons ago for the Giants for a minute. Played well. Had strong under the surface marks for accuracy, underlying accuracy on catchable target rate and CPOE and things of that nature. Limited overall performances, but still a capable rusher, somewhat capable thrower. He has 2 fantastic weapons on his side and then not much else to really work with. You can see everybody lacks depth in this offense. Everybody lacks projection. Downboard, we get Tyler Johnson, Arian Smith, Alan Lazard splitting up the remaining targets that come behind Garrett Wilson, the remaining shares of touches that come behind Breece Hall. Wilson, 8.5 targets a game, 9.4 yard average depth, and more than 50% of the air yards so far. He's got a touchdown on the board already this season. Breece Hall carrying the ball 14.5 times a game, adds another 3.5 potential targets via targeting in the passing attack, potential touches rather. 4.7 yards per rush attempt this season. Had a tremendous week 1, but got poached for a touchdown by Braylon Allen, who is minimally involved overall and not good when he is out there. 2.5 yards per rush attempt, but scored that touchdown frustratingly and took it away from what would have otherwise been a great Breece Hall performance in week 1. He dipped pretty significantly in week 2. Hall put up just 29 yards on 10 carries last week. Caught 2 of 3 targets over 14 routes for just 9 yards. Obviously, an utterly disappointing performance for the player against Buffalo, but a high-caliber running back that I've got a lot of faith in, and I think that he's going to be involved in this Tampa Bay game. I mean, Tampa's going to go out there and do their part to push the scoring here. So Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson are almost by default, if the Jets are going to be competitive at all, going to have to do a lot out here. But it is going to come down to, in parts, Tyrod getting the ball, and that gets a little bit frustrating, a little bit difficult. Mason Taylor, an uninvolved tight end so far, does have an 8.7 yard average depth of target, but just target and a half per game. There's just, again, not a lot of opportunity going around down here. Different story on the Tampa Bay side. You got a tremendous option in Mike Evans, who's just been out there burning coverage and winning routes, but drawing tight coverage that's limited the opportunities for him. He's caught 5 balls in each of the first 2 games, yet to find the end zone, but operating on a 14.1 yard average depth of target, drawing 44% of the air yards in this offense. He's got Emeka Egbuka next to him. Egbuka questionable for this one, but seems to be trending toward playing. He scored 3 times already. He's operating on an 11.7 yard average depth of target, filling in that strong wide receiver 2 or 1A, however you want to look at it, role that we've seen Chris Godwin play in this offense in the past. Just been excellent to start out his career. It'll be interesting when Godwin comes back to see what happens here. But Egbuka, as long as he's on the field, definitely a strong second option in the passing game behind Evans. I still would prefer Evans, but he's going to see a lot of Sauce Gardner 3rd week in a row with a premium corner covering him, or at least for part of the game. That said, even against a player like that, Evans stands tall and could win the day pretty easily. At worst, he's going to give you a 50-yard, 5-catch type performance like he has over the first 2 games. Bucky Irving is pretty tremendous, 15.5 carries a game. Limited as far as efficiency so far this year, 3.5 yards per rush attempt, but heavy involvement in the passing game puts him over 20 potential touches every week. Definitely an interesting option who will be better than that on the ground and has produced already with a touchdown and 5.8 yards per target in the passing game. Rachaad White got edged out of that role last year by Bucky's emergence, but is still around. He's an interesting player. He's gaining 6.6 yards per rush attempt for one thing on his limited action so far. 6 carries a game, not nothing. Punched one into the end zone last week. Drawing limited action in the passing game, that was where he used to be heavily involved and used to be a PPR priority. Right now, he's just been a little bit interesting, showing some burst on a couple of rushing attempts per game. Overall, this is Bucky's world, and Rachaad White just lives in it. But if we're looking for those downboard, touchdown-dependent dart throw running backs, White is that and maybe a little bit more if any of the involvement in the passing game comes back. So that's an interesting player. 10 carries last week for 65 yards and a touchdown, but it's not all about that. He ran 7 routes, was targeted twice, ran 10 routes, targeted once in the first week, played 14 snaps with the offense, carried the ball twice for 14 yards, showed a little bit of explosiveness in that one as well. It's an interesting guy who used to be more involved in this offense. Any given slate, we could see that return. Might have just been last week, and then that's it for the season. We don't know, but that's a wild card play. Cade Otton, just a mixer at the tight end position, low volume on a mediocre 6.6 yard average depth of target. He'll fall into the end zone occasionally and find some value. Sterling Shepard seeing a little bit of involvement on an 11.5 yard average depth of target, over 5 targets a game. Hasn't found the end zone. Mediocre 3rd option in the wide receiver room and like the 4th or 5th highest priority pass catcher in this offense. Fairly low end. And then you get Ryan Miller, a couple spots down. Touchdown scorer last week. Drawing just 1 target per game, but put one in the end zone, 17.5 yard average depth of target. Interestingly, wide receiver for $3,000 on DraftKings, $4,100 tight end on the FanDuel slate. So just an interesting positional wrinkle. And then Baker. I didn't really talk about Baker. He's averaged just 5.5 yards per pass attempt. So again, if we're going to criticize others for things like that, we got to at least throw him into the mix. But his comes with 5 touchdown passes so far against no interceptions. It also comes against a 9.1 yard average intended air yards per attempt. So he is actively trying to get the ball up and down the field to guys like Mike Evans, who are outstanding at doing that. No issues with the Baker play. Fire away, 35 pass attempts per game. The volume's there. The production should be there all season long, and he's got stellar options in the skill roles. All right, last game up. Picked up a little time going through these last few, but it's 5:40, and I got to get those baseball projections on the site. Drake May, like we talked about, showed us the production we were looking for in last week's game. Was downright interesting. He's got 3 touchdowns on the season against just 1 interception. He's thrown for 7.5 yards per pass attempt, 250 and change yards a game on nearly 35 passes a game. Runs the ball a little bit. That's part of his skill set. Gaining 3 yards per attempt on 7 carries a game is nothing special yet, but he ran the ball into the end zone last week, which is what we were looking for. Gives him a little bit of padded scoring. He's facing a Pittsburgh defense that has allowed 9.3 yards per pass attempt and got utterly shredded by Justin Fields in that first game. So definitely the opportunity for Drake May to go out and do at least that. Could score another one with his legs. Could throw a couple, though. He's got interesting but not special receivers in Stephon Diggs, Kayshon Boutte. Boutte rocketed up the board after a strong week 1. Fell back down the board a little bit in a week 2. Diggs just kind of there. Ranks 33rd, 23rd on DraftKings, 36th, 39th on the FanDuel slate. He's drawn 6 targets a game on a 7.9 yard average depth. 19% of the air yards, but has not scored yet. I don't like this at all. The Ramondre Stevenson, Trevion Henderson job share here. 65% of the snaps going in Ramondre's direction as the nominal 1. But how long does that last? He's putting up 3.8 yards per rush attempt again this season. Limited as far as the efficiency goes, and it only amounts to 9 attempts per game versus the 4 that Henderson has gotten. Henderson has put up 4.6 yards per rush attempt. He's been by far the more productive back, but only 0.6 of that has come after contact. So what does it actually look like? We don't really know. It's more opportunistic in the types of plays that he's run. He's seen 4 targets a game. He's been a little bit involved in the passing attack, but it's resulted in a 6.8 yards per target, no score, negative 3.5% of the air yards, given the fact that he catches the ball in the backfield that makes things happen. Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry, inoffensive options down the depth chart. Neither guy is overly involved. Henry's drawn 5.5 targets per game, just 3 last week. Does have an interesting 11.6 yard average depth of target on the season, but needs to get into the end zone. Douglas operates a little bit more underneath, 4.6 yard average depth of target. He does have a touchdown on the season. Draws 4 targets on average, but only 1 last week. Minimally involved and at best the 4th target in this offense. You've also got Mac Hollins down there. 7.3 yard average depth of target from Mac so far. Limited as far as what those targets look like. Typically, he is operating on a larger average depth of target, but he's got a touchdown on the board. If we're just looking for a sneaky dart throw, he's present. He's not looking special, not going to rank out well, but he's there, and he would be worth a couple of shares if you're building a lot of New England stacks. If you're building one, that's probably not your top priority guy, but he's a mixer at worst. On the other side, Aaron Rodgers, to round things out, and with my least favorite quarterback in the league, 5 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. 4 of those touchdown passes came in week 1. Had an outstanding performance against the Jets. Could come in against a New England team that is allowing 10.3 yards per pass attempt to rank dead last in the league and have another strong passing day. I don't want to take it away from him. He was better than I gave him credit for last year. Threw 28 touchdown passes with the Jets. Upper 3,000s for yardage, I want to say. Clicking the Jets is not going to get us there faster. Threw for 3,897 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions last season in New York. A lot of up and down performances, kind of like this year so far. After the strong week 1, slipped to 203 yards on 18 of 33 passing, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions against Seattle. So while he's facing a nothing defense, I don't know. I question how the consistency is really going to look through the long term this year. He's also not exactly playing with an incredibly robust room of pass catchers. DK Metcalf leading the way after a solid career out in Seattle. 5.6 yard average depth of target over 6 targets per game. Nothing special there. He's got a touchdown on the board, but so does basically everybody on this team already. Jonnu Smith has one. 4.2 yards per target on a negative 0.4 yard average depth. Four targets last week, 5 per game. Pat Freiermuth splits that tight end job with Jonnu. So far, Jonnu's been slightly more involved, but it's not like Freiermuth's off the table. 4 targets last game, 3.5 on average. 7.1 yard average depth of target versus the guy who catches the ball behind the line of scrimmage. So I'm kind of more interested in Freiermuth because he's at least operating down the field a little bit. He hasn't scored this year, but he scored a handful of touchdowns last year and was interesting a few times for us. Calvin Austin going down the field and getting the ball. So is Roman Wilson on a lot lighter volume. Wilson just a 6.97% air yard share despite the 11.5 yard ADOT because he's only been targeted twice. 17.3 yard average depth of target for Calvin Austin. He's got a touchdown on the board, drawing 50+% of the air yards in short action so far, playing 86% of the snaps. He is their nominal number 2 in the passing game, but that is not a highly ranked option to be the number 2 in your passing game. Pittsburgh ranks 22nd as a stack. They spiked to 11th by value on DraftKings, 21st by value on FanDuel. It wouldn't shock me if Aaron Rodgers had a successful passing day. I also do think there's a lot of value that just rides through Jalen Warren in this spot. 15th and 7th ranked by value on DraftKings, 15-10 on the FanDuel slate. Warren has played 52% of the snaps on average, went up to 58% last week, kind of getting away with this job. He's a little involved in the passing game. 12.5 carries per game, only 3.4 yards per attempt, though. Kind of limited as far as the output. Fortunately for him, the backup, Kenny Gainwell, only 3.3 yards per rush attempt. He's been targeted significantly in the offense. He will be involved on passing downs, but it looks like it's Jalen Warren's job for the most part on rushing downs. You've got Caleb Johnson, who they drafted this year, but he's played only 3% of the snaps, mostly involved on special teams so far, so a non-threat down the depth chart. Jalen Warren, kind of interesting, at least as a value wrinkle at the running back spot if you're desperate. 55.62, inoffensively priced across sites. I think that's everybody in this game. Everybody relevant anyway. Yeah, that does it. With that in mind, you guys, handful of people here still watching. Cub says, I see you were still here. I'm about to punch out and put those baseball projections on the site, I promise. JSN just sick. That's a good sign. He'll probably get out there then. Let me get out of here, though, you guys. You absolutely rock. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Above below article hits the website tomorrow morning. Projections updates through tonight, rankings updates through tonight into tomorrow morning and up to lock. I'll update any groups article changes. I'll drop the stats into the groups article, and we'll be good to go. Baseball content coming very shortly in the next few minutes up on the website for tonight's contests. Good luck out there tonight. Good luck out there tomorrow on the main football slate. Somebody go win something. Share those results when you do at Roto Scouts on Twitter or in the premium Discord, link for free down below. I will see you guys later. Go get them, gang.